presented by Soundlibra.com. Explore more titles via the link in the description or at Soundlibra.com. Welcome to Never Stop Learning. Let's explore self-education's power.
That's right, Alex. Our world changes fast. We need to be our own teachers to keep up. Before we jump in, a quick heads up. While we'll discuss personal growth, this series is for educational purposes and isn't a substitute for professional career or mental health advice.
Great point, Lisa. Now, formal education is a great start, but it has limits. Curriculums are set, and they can't always match fast-evolving industries. What happens after that structured learning ends?
That's when we take the reins. It's about owning our learning. I've often wanted to learn something new for a hobby or career and felt unsure how to start outside a classroom.
And that's where self-education shines. It's actively seeking knowledge, understanding the world, and growing on your own terms. It's more than just facts. It's a curious, driven approach to the unknown.
So, self-education means more than reading. It's nurturing that personal drive to learn. Why is this so important for everyone?
Relevance is a huge factor. In fields like technology, knowledge can become outdated quickly. Without seeking new information, you risk falling behind. Self-education keeps you current and valuable.
That makes sense. It's about staying employable and adaptable. If I want a new role needing data analysis, I can't just wait for training. I must learn those skills myself.
Exactly. And it enriches your personal life too. Imagine understanding complex issues, appreciating art more deeply, or mastering a new craft. It broadens perspectives, sharpens critical thinking, and makes life more interesting.
Absolutely. Learning something new, even unrelated to work, often sparks fresh ideas or connections. It's like creating more pathways in your brain.
That's a great analogy, Lisa, building more pathways. Each new piece of knowledge forms a neural connection. With self-education, you're not bound by a syllabus. You can follow your passions and dive into subjects that truly fascinate you. This intrinsic motivation is incredibly powerful.
And that motivation can be tough to find, especially if we're used to being told what to learn. How do we tap into or cultivate it?
That's an excellent question, and it leads us to the foundation of self-education: curiosity. Self-education thrives on curiosity, that innate desire to ask why and how, and explore beyond the surface. Nurturing that spark is crucial.
Curiosity. So, it's about noticing what interests us and not letting it pass. It's about allowing ourselves to wonder.
Exactly. And this series, Never Stop Learning, is your guide. We'll walk you through building a sustainable self-education habit. We'll cover choosing what to learn, finding the best resources, and making the learning stick.
It's exciting. Many feel overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information today. Endless books, courses, articles, videos. Where do you even begin?
That's a common challenge. In the next episode, we'll discuss how to cultivate that essential curiosity. Think of it as fanning the flames, learning to recognize interests and turn them into a desire to learn more.
So, today we've laid the groundwork. We talked about why self-education is essential in our changing world. It keeps us relevant, enriches our lives, and fosters growth.
We also touched on curiosity as the engine for lifelong learning. It's about asking questions, exploring, and seeking answers.
And we're setting you up to build this skill practically. It's about unlocking potential by taking charge of your learning.
As you go about your week, pay attention to what sparks your curiosity. What questions arise? What do you want to understand better? Those are the first steps in your self-education journey.
Think of it this way. Formal education gives you a map, but self-education lets you draw your own map to explore territories that truly interest you. It's about becoming an intellectual adventurer.
That's the essence of unlocking your full potential. It's a continuous journey of discovery and growth. We're thrilled to have you join us as we build these habits together.
This is just the beginning of your learning and personal growth. We want to help you become an unstoppable learner.
So, that's our introduction to the power of self-education. Join us next time as we explore cultivating curiosity.
Thanks for listening. Next episode, Cultivating Curiosity.
Welcome back to Never Stop Learning. Today, we're cultivating curiosity.
We talked about motivation last time. Now we need to fan that flame, right? Curiosity seems natural, but sometimes it feels dormant in our busy lives.
Indeed, it's about nurturing curiosity. Think of it like a muscle. If unused, it weakens. But with effort, you can strengthen it into a learning companion.
How do we strengthen that muscle? Where do we begin to feel curious again?
Start by recognizing that curiosity isn't always about grand questions. It begins with the everyday. Develop a mindset of wonder, asking why and how about your surroundings. Have you ever noticed something small and wondered about its story?
Oh, all the time. I saw a new type of bird in my garden recently. My immediate thought was, where did that come from? What is it called? That little question led me down a mini rabbit hole of local bird species.
That's the perfect example. That innate desire to know more. That is the seed of curiosity. The first practical step is to cultivate a habit of observation. What are the small details you tend to overlook in your daily routine?
Hmm, I suppose I often just rush through my commute, not really taking in the architecture or the people. Or at the grocery store, I just grab what's on my list without noticing new products or how things are displayed.
Exactly. So, a simple exercise is to consciously slow down and observe. For your commute, pick one building each day and just notice its features. What's its style? What material is it made of? Who might have designed it? This isn't about needing an answer immediately. It's about noticing the question.
I can see how that would work. It's like training your brain to look for interesting things, rather than just letting your eyes glaze over.
Precisely. And once you've observed something, the next step in cultivating curiosity is to embrace not knowing. We live in an age where we can get answers instantly, which is amazing, but it can sometimes short circuit the process of wonder.
That's a good point. If I see a car I don't recognize, my next instinct isn't to wonder about it, but to pull out my phone and identify it.
And there's often value in that immediate knowledge, but sometimes letting a question linger for a little while can be more beneficial for nurturing curiosity. Try this. When a question pops up, jot it down. Just the question itself. Don't immediately seek the answer. Let's sit with you.
So, instead of Googling, I'd write down, what's that bird called? And then move on?
Yes, this trains your brain to appreciate the question itself. It's an acknowledgement of the unknown, and that's where genuine curiosity thrives. This can feel uncomfortable at first because we're so used to immediate gratification.
It does sound a little bit like resisting the urge to scratch an itch.
A perfect analogy. And the more you can sit with that itch, the more you learn about patience and the deeper the eventual understanding when you do seek the answer. Another powerful way to cultivate curiosity is to actively seek out novel experiences.
Novel experiences? Like traveling to new places?
That's one way, absolutely. But it doesn't have to be that grand. It can be trying a new recipe, listening to a genre of music you'd normally avoid, taking a different route home, or visiting a local park you've never been to. The key is to expose yourself to things that are outside your usual bubble.
When you step outside your comfort zone, new questions naturally arise. Like, how is this recipe different from what I usually make? Or, why do I usually avoid this type of music?
Exactly. These are all excellent pathways to curiosity. And beyond seeking new experiences, we also need to engage with existing information in a more curious way. Think about how you consume news or educational content. Are you passively absorbing, Or are you actively engaging with the material?
That's a good question. I think sometimes I'm just scrolling through headlines, maybe reading a few paragraphs. It doesn't always leave me feeling very curious.
To foster curiosity, try asking more challenging questions of the content you consume. When you read an article, ask, what assumptions is the author making? What evidence is presented? And is it strong? What are the counterarguments? Who might benefit from this information?
So, it's like being a detective with the information, looking for clues and deeper meanings.
Precisely. This active interrogation of information, rather than passive reception, is a cornerstone of developing a curious mind. And it's also vital to embrace intellectual humility. This means recognizing that you don't know everything, and that's perfectly okay.
That can be hard for some people, can it? Admitting you don't know something.
It can be, especially if we've been conditioned to believe that knowing everything is the goal. But for a lifelong learner, the goal isn't to know everything. It's to be open to learning everything. Embracing the idea that there's always more to discover is fundamental. When you come across something you don't understand, see it as an invitation, not a failure.
An invitation to learn. I like that framing. It shifts the perspective from inadequacy to opportunity.
Exactly. And this leads to a crucial mindset shift, viewing learning as exploration, not just acquisition. When you approach a new topic with a mindset of exploration, you're driven by a sense of discovery, of uncovering something new and exciting, rather than just hitting a target or passing a test.
So, instead of thinking, I need to learn X, it becomes, I wonder what X is all about.
That's the essence of it. And this mindset of exploration naturally fuels curiosity. We also need to be mindful of our environment and the people we surround ourselves with. Are the people in your life open to new ideas? Do they ask questions?
If you're around people who are always dismissive or who think they know it all, I imagine that would stifle your own curiosity.
It absolutely can. Seek out individuals who are curious themselves, who ask questions, who are open to discussion, and who don't have all the answers. Learning communities, whether online or in person, can be fantastic for this. Sharing questions and discoveries with others can amplify your own sense of wonder.
So far, we've talked about observation, embracing not knowing, new experiences, questioning content, intellectual humility, and being mindful of our social circles. That's a lot to digest.
It is, but remember, it's about small, consistent steps. You don't have to overhaul your entire life overnight. Start with one thing. Perhaps for the next week, you commit to writing down one question a day that arises from your observations.
That feels manageable. One question from observation each day. And then what? Do I eventually look up the answers to those questions?
Yes, when you feel ready. The act of writing it down and letting it sit for a bit is the primary goal for cultivating curiosity. Later, you can explore the answers. But that initial pause, that moment of acknowledging the unknown and letting the question itself be the focus, is powerful.
It's like planting a seed and letting it sprout before you water it.
A wonderful analogy. And remember, this isn't about forcing yourself to be interested in things you're not. It's about unlocking the latent curiosity that's already within you and learning to recognize the sparks that ignite your interest. What truly fascinates you? What makes you lose track of time?
Those are the big questions, aren't they? For me, it's often things that seem complex, and then, when I start learning about them, they break down into simpler, elegant parts.
That a great insight into what sparks your curiosity. For some, it might be patterns in nature, for others, historical connections, or how things are built. Pay attention to those moments when something genuinely captures your attention. That's your internal compass pointing you toward a learning opportunity.
So, the takeaway is that curiosity isn't something you're born with or without. It's a practice. It's a muscle we need to exercise by observing, questioning, seeking new experiences, and remaining open.
Exactly. Curiosity is the bedrock of all self-education. Without it, learning can feel like a chore. With it, learning becomes an adventure. We've discussed practical ways to nurture that sense of wonder and begin the journey of becoming a more curious individual.
This has been incredibly helpful, Alex. It feels much more achievable now, knowing where to start.
And that's the goal. Cultivating curiosity is the essential first step in building your self-education habit. Next, we'll build on this foundation by looking at how to construct your own personal learning curriculum.
Sounds fascinating. I'm already curious about that.
Great. We'll see you then. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to Never Stop Learning. We explored the incredible power of cultivating curiosity.
And it's such an exciting starting point, isn't it? But after that initial burst, what's the next step to know what to learn?
That's exactly what we're diving into today. This episode is all about building your personal curriculum. Think of it as designing your own educational journey.
Designing a journey. I like that. So, where do we start?
We start with the why. What are your personal goals? Are you looking to learn a new skill for your career? Do you want to understand a historical period? Knowing your why gives your learning direction.
So, it's not just picking a topic, but understanding why you find it interesting and what you hope to achieve.
Precisely. If your goal is to improve travel snapshots, your curriculum will differ from someone aiming for professional portrait work. The why dictates the what and the how.
Okay, so we've identified our why. What's next?
Next, we map out the learning pathway. Break down your big goal into smaller, manageable steps. Think of planning a road trip with planned stops along the way.
So, for better travel snapshots, the steps might be understanding aperture, shutter speed, ISO, and basic editing.
Exactly. And for each step, identify the core concepts you need to grasp. It's about identifying the essential information for a solid foundation.
This sounds like it requires research up front to even figure out those core concepts.
It absolutely does. Do some initial reading, watch videos, or talk to experts. The goal is an overview of the landscape, not getting bogged down in details. Focus on the big picture.
So, we're creating a map with major landmarks and identifying the main roads connecting them.
That's a fantastic analogy. And once you have this map, you start looking for the best resources to help you navigate. This is where we move beyond casual consumption to smart selections.
That's a perfect segue into choosing your learning resources wisely. It's easy to get lost in today's volume of information.
Indeed, when selecting resources, consider a few key factors. First, the quality and credibility of the source. Is it from an expert? Is it well regarded?
So, for photography, we might look for courses from reputable schools or books by renowned photographers rather than random blog posts.
Precisely. Second, consider the format. Do you learn best through reading, watching videos, listening, or hands-on practice? Tailor resources to your preferred learning style.
And different resources might be better suited for different learning stages. A beginner's guide for foundations, more advanced texts for deeper dives.
Absolutely. And that leads to the third factor, depth and scope. Does the resource cover the topic in enough detail for your goals? Find the right level for each step.
So we're building a structured, yet flexible approach. How flexible are we talking? Does this curriculum become set in stone?
Not at all. Your personal curriculum should be a living document. Interests might shift, goals might evolve. It's important to be open to adjustments. Imagine it as a dynamic roadmap.
I love that idea of a dynamic roadmap. It takes the pressure off having to get it perfectly right from the start.
Exactly. And this flexibility means incorporating different types of learning. It's not just consuming information, it's engaging with it. This includes actively recalling, practicing, and even teaching. We'll dive into these active strategies later in the series.
So, to recap, first identify your why, your goals. Then, map out a learning pathway with clear steps and core concepts.
Next, Thoughtfully select your learning resources, considering their quality, format, and depth. And critically, embrace flexibility, viewing your curriculum as a dynamic guide.
It's about taking control of our learning, Alex. Moving from a passive recipient to an active architect of our knowledge. It's empowering.
It really is. By consciously building your personal curriculum, you ensure your learning is purposeful, efficient, and rewarding. You're learning towards something specific.
And that structured approach, coupled with flexibility, will help us stay motivated. It gives us a framework, but also the freedom to explore.
Right. We've identified our why, planned our route, and started packing our bags. Now, the adventure really begins.
So, we've laid the groundwork. What's on the horizon for our next episode, Alex?
Next time, we'll be putting those selected resources to the test. We'll be diving deep into how to master active recall, one of the most powerful techniques for making information stick.
Fantastic. So, for this episode, remember, define your destination by understanding your why, map your journey with clear steps, choose your companions wisely by selecting trusted resources, and always be ready to adjust your route.
That's a great summary, Lisa. Join us next time as we explore the power of actively engaging with what we learn. Thanks for listening. Welcome back. Last time, we dove deep into cultivating that essential spark of curiosity. Now, as we look to feed that curiosity, we face a new challenge: information overload.
It really is overwhelming, Alex. There's so much out there: books, articles, podcasts, online courses, videos. How do we even begin to choose what's worth our time and focus?
That's exactly what we're tackling today in Episode 4, Smart Selection, Choosing Your Learning Resources Wisely. Our goal is to help you navigate this vast landscape and pick resources that will genuinely help you grow, not just drown you in data.
So, we're talking about being efficient with our learning investments. It's like going grocery shopping. You don't just grab everything off the shelves, right? You pick what you need and what's good quality.
Perfect analogy, Lisa. The first step in smart selection is understanding your own goals. Remember from Episode 3, when we talked about building your personal curriculum? This is where that pays off.
Right. When you know what you want to achieve or what specific skill you want to develop, it's easier to filter. You're not just learning for the sake of learning. You have a target.
Precisely. So, ask yourself, what do I really want to learn? What problem am I trying to solve? What skill do I need to master? Write these down. This clarity acts as your compass, guiding you towards relevant resources.
Okay, so I have my learning objective. Then what? How do I evaluate a specific book or course? Does just having a good title mean it's good content?
Unfortunately, no. The title is just a bait. For books, a great starting point is to look at the table of contents and the index. Do the topics covered align with your learning objective? Does it seem comprehensive, or does it skim the surface?
That makes sense. What about reviews? They can be helpful, but sometimes they seem biased or not very in-depth.
Absolutely. Reviews are a mixed bag. Look for patterns. Are many people saying the same thing, both positive and negative? Are the negative reviews about the content itself, or about minor issues like typos or shipping times? For online courses, look for reviews from people who have actually completed the course. See what they say about the instructor's clarity, the course structure, and the practical application of the material.
And for something like a published book, who is the author? Is this someone who actually has expertise in the subject?
Excellent point. Research the author. What are their credentials? Have they written other works on the subject? Are they an academic, a practitioner in the field, or perhaps a journalist reporting on it? Their background can tell you a lot about the perspective and depth you can expect. For example, if you want to learn advanced physics, you'd likely trust a physicist's textbook over a popular science writer's overview. though both can have their place.
So, it's about matching the resource's depth and perspective to your learning goal. If I'm a beginner, maybe a popular science book is great. If I'm aiming for expert level knowledge, I need something more rigorous.
Exactly. Now let's talk about online resources, articles, blog posts, videos. These can be fantastic for quick hit learning or exploring a new topic, but they often require an extra layer of scrutiny.
Because anyone can publish online, right?
Precisely. Always check the source. Is it a reputable institution, a well-known expert, or a known misinformation site? Look for evidence of research, citations, and fact-checking. And for video content, consider the presenter's clarity and how well they explain concepts. Do they rely on jargon without explanation?
I've found that with online articles, the date matters a lot too. Something written 5 years ago might be completely outdated now, especially in fast-moving fields like technology or science.
You're absolutely right, Lisa. Currency is crucial. Always check the publication date and consider if the information might have been superseded by newer research or developments. For academic papers, you can often find newer studies that cite or expand upon the older ones.
So we've got define your goal, research the author and publisher, check the table of contents and index, read reviews critically, and consider the currency of the information. That's a solid checklist.
It is. And let's not forget about variety. While books offer depth, a well-made online course can provide interactive exercises and community support. A podcast might be perfect for learning on your commute. Don't limit yourself to just one format.
True. Sometimes hearing someone explain something in a conversational way in a podcast clicks in a way reading a dense paragraph doesn't. It's about finding the right tool for the job.
It is. Think of your learning resources as tools in a toolbox. You wouldn't use a hammer to screw in a bolt. Similarly, you don't want to use a superficial overview for deep learning or a complex academic text for a quick introduction.
And what about the passive consumption versus active learning we've touched on? How does resource selection play into that?
Great question. As we'll explore more deeply in later episodes, passive consumption, just reading or listening without engaging, is far less effective. When selecting resources, look for those that encourage active engagement. Do they have practice problems? Are there prompts for reflection? Do they suggest further activities?
So, a textbook with end of chapter questions is better than one without, even if the content is similar?
Often, yes. Those questions are built-in opportunities for active recall and application, which we know are key to retention. Even with a simpler article, you can pause, summarize what you just read in your own words, or try to explain it to someone else. That turns passive intake into active learning.
That's a good reminder. It's not just about the resource itself, but how we engage with it.
Exactly. And another helpful strategy, especially when starting out with a new subject, is to look for introductory materials that clearly define key terms. Good resources will introduce jargon and then explain it. A resource that dumps you into a sea of technical terms without explanation can be disorienting.
I can definitely relate to that feeling of being lost. So we're looking for resources that are clear, credible, current, and encourage our active participation.
You've got it. And sometimes you might pick up a resource that halfway through you realize isn't quite right for you. Don't be afraid to put it down and find something else. Your learning journey is more important than finishing a book or course you're not getting value from.
That feels freeing. It's okay to pivot if a resource isn't working. It's not a failure. It's part of smart selection.
Absolutely. It's about maximizing your learning efficiency and enjoyment. So, to recap what we've discussed today, first, clearly define your learning goals. This is your guiding star. Second, research the author, publisher, and source for credibility. Third, examine the content structure, the table of contents and index to ensure it covers what you need. Fourth, critically evaluate reviews and testimonials. Fifth, always check the publication date for relevance. And finally, prioritize resources that encourage active learning and engagement, and don't hesitate to switch if a resource isn't serving your goals.
That's a fantastic summary, Alex. By being intentional about our resource selection, we can make our learning efforts much more effective and, importantly, more enjoyable. We're not just consuming information, we're choosing the best ingredients for our personal growth.
Well said, Lisa. Investing time in choosing the right learning resources is one of the highest leverage activities for any lifelong learner. It saves you time, frustration, and ensures you're building on a solid foundation.
And it keeps that curiosity we cultivated in the last episode alive and well.
Indeed, it does. So next time we'll be diving into mastering active recall. Remember how we touched on active learning today? That's a huge part of it.
I'm looking forward to that.
Thanks for listening. Welcome back. Last time, we talked about building your personal curriculum.
That's right. We defined the what of our learning journey. Today, we're focusing on the how to make knowledge truly stick.
Exactly. We're diving into active recall. This is a powerful technique for anyone serious about learning.
Active recall. Alex, what is it, and how is it different from rereading notes? I've definitely spent hours just rereading.
That's the core difference. Passive review, like rereading, feels productive because information is familiar, but it doesn't strengthen memory like active recall does. Active recall means actively retrieving information from your memory. Think of it as your brain doing strength training for knowledge.
Strength training for knowledge. I like that. So, you try to remember without looking at the answer?
Precisely. Imagine learning a new language. Rereading vocabulary lists won't help if you can't recall the words in a conversation. Active recall would be using flashcards to force yourself to remember the foreign word from the English one without peeking.
So, the effort of pulling information out is what makes it so effective. It makes your brain work.
Exactly. When you actively retrieve information, you test yourself. This reveals what you don't know and strengthens the neural pathways for what you do recall. Each successful recall makes that information easier to access later. It's like forging a stronger mental path.
That makes perfect sense. Passive review is like looking at a map, and active recall is like actually navigating the terrain.
That's a brilliant analogy. Studies consistently show active recall leads to significantly better long-term retention. It combats the illusion of knowing, where you think you know something but can't actually explain it.
The illusion of knowing is a real trap. So, how do we practically implement active recall?
One of the most basic methods is self-quizzing. After learning something, stop and ask yourself questions about it.
So, after reading, I should write down questions or just ask them aloud.
Either is fine. For example, after learning about photosynthesis, ask yourself, what are the main inputs or what are the byproducts? Then, try to answer without looking at your notes.
And if I struggle to answer?
That's your valuable cue. It shows you where your knowledge is weak. You then go back, find the answer, and try to recall it again later. This cycle of attempting recall, identifying gaps, reviewing, and reattempting recall builds strong learning.
Okay, self-quizzing is one method. What's another?
Flashcards are incredibly effective for active recall. Use physical cards or digital apps. Write a question or term on one side and the answer on the other. Then, practice recalling the answer before flipping.
I use flashcards in school, but I mostly just flip them to see the answer.
To use them for active recall, the goal is to force retrieval. If you get it wrong or hesitate, mark that card for review.
So, it's not just about getting them right immediately, but about the attempt to recall.
Precisely. Another powerful technique is the blank page method. After learning a concept, take a blank piece of paper and write down everything you remember about it, as if teaching someone else. Include key points or diagrams from memory.
That sounds challenging. Explaining it from memory?
It can be, but it's very revealing. You'll quickly see where your understanding is incomplete. You might remember a definition, but not an example, or a step, but not its purpose. This method tests recall and forces you to organize your thoughts.
It's like trying to describe a blueprint without looking at it.
Exactly. This ties directly into the personal curriculum we discussed in episode 3. If your curriculum includes history, after reading about an era, try to outline key events and figures from memory.
I appreciate how these topics build on each other. So, to summarize the active recall methods, self-quizzing, flashcards for recall, and the blank page method for explaining from memory.
You've got it. A word of caution. Active recall can feel harder and more frustrating initially. That struggle, the effort of retrieval, is what makes learning durable. Don't retreat to passive review because it feels easier.
Easy doesn't lead to deep learning. Knowledge needs to be challenged, right?
Absolutely. This process builds understanding you can actually use. You become an active constructor of knowledge, not just a passive recipient.
So, we are retraining our brains to access information more efficiently, moving from recognition to true knowing.
Precisely. This foundation is crucial for everything that follows. If your knowledge isn't actively recalled, applying it or building upon it becomes much harder.
So, our listeners should try to test themselves and explain concepts without looking. Make your brain work for the information.
Yes, embrace the retrieval effort. Your future self will thank you for it. Active recall is a fundamental shift in how you interact with information.
It truly is. To recap this episode, active recall means pulling information from your memory, not just rereading. It's harder but more effective for long-term retention. We covered self-quizzing, flashcards, and the blank page technique, and the key is that retrieval effort strengthens memory and understanding.
Excellent summary, Lisa. This powerfully complements the personal curriculum we built.
Fantastic! We've moved from curiosity and curriculum to mastering the act of learning itself.
Indeed. And in our next episode, we'll explore another crucial companion to active recall, spaced repetition.
Ooh, I'm excited for that. Thanks for listening.
Welcome back to Never Stop Learning. Last time, we explored the power of active recall.
Now, we're diving into another cornerstone of effective learning, spaced repetition.
At its core, spaced repetition is a learning technique where you review information at increasing intervals of time. You're strategically revisiting what you've learned, just as your memory of it starts to fade. Think of it like visiting a garden. You water your plants when they need it, and over time, they grow stronger. Spaced repetition is similar for your brain.
So, it's about when you review. Why does that timing matter so much?
When you learn something new, it's fragile. If you don't revisit it, that memory decays. However, research shows that if you review that information right before you're about to forget it, your memory of it becomes stronger and lasts longer. Each time you correctly recall information after a review, the interval before the next review can be longer.
So, each successful recall strengthens the memory, allowing us to space out future reviews further and further. That's fascinating.
Absolutely. The opposite of spaced repetition is often called the forgetting curve. This curve illustrates how quickly we tend to forget information if we don't actively work to retain it. Spaced repetition is a direct countermeasure to this. It helps us move information from our short-term memory into our long-term memory.
The forgetting curve. I can definitely relate to that. So, what does a typical spaced repetition schedule look like?
A common starting point is to review the material after about 1 day. If you recall it correctly, the next review might be after 3 days, then 7 days, then 14 days, and so on. The intervals gradually increase. The key is that the review happens when you're just about to forget it.
It's like a gentle nudge to your brain. And can these intervals be adjusted?
Modern spaced repetition systems are often more dynamic. They can adapt based on your performance. If you struggle to recall something, the system will show it to you again sooner. If you find it very easy, it will show it to you later.
So it's not a rigid, one-size-fits-all approach. It's intelligent enough to adapt to individual learning speeds. How can we actually implement this in our daily learning? Are there tools we can use?
Definitely. The most popular way to implement spaced repetition is through flashcards, especially digital flashcards. There are many excellent apps and software programs designed for this. They allow you to create digital flashcards with a question on one side and the answer on the other. When you review a card, the system prompts you to rate how easy or difficult it was to recall the answer.
So I make a flashcard, try to recall it, and then tell the app how well I did. The app then schedules the next review based on my feedback.
Exactly. These apps use algorithms to calculate the optimal review schedule for each flashcard. Some of the most well-known ones include Anki, Quizlet, and SuperMemo. They handle the scheduling for you.
Anki, Quizlet, SuperMemo. I'll have to look those up. So, for example, if I'm learning a new language, I could create flashcards for vocabulary words or grammar rules.
Precisely. Imagine learning French vocabulary. You create a card with bonjour on one side and hello on the other. When the app shows you bonjour, you try to remember hello. If you get it right easily, the app might schedule that card for review in, say, 3 days. If you struggle, it might show it to you again in a few hours or the next day.
That sounds much more engaging than just reading a list of words. And the fact that it adapts to my performance is a huge plus. What about learning more complex subjects like history or science?
Absolutely. For history, you could create flashcards for key dates and events or important figures. For science, you could use them for definitions of terms or scientific processes. The key is to break down the information into small, testable chunks. Instead of making a flashcard that says, "Explain the French Revolution," you'd create multiple cards. What year did the French Revolution begin? Who was a key figure in the French Revolution?
Breaking it down into smaller pieces. That's a good tip for any kind of learning. It makes the information more digestible and easier to test. So we're essentially using active recall, but with a strategic, increasing schedule.
You've got it. We talked about active recall, making the retrieval effortful, which strengthens the memory. Spaced repetition optimizes the timing of that effortful retrieval. When you combine active recall with spaced repetition, you create a powerful synergy for long-term retention. It's like building a sturdy house. Active recall is like using strong bricks, and spaced repetition is like ensuring those bricks are placed at the right time and in the right order to create a stable structure.
Strong bricks and optimal timing. I like that analogy. So if I'm using a flashcard app, does that mean I should just religiously review every card it shows me? Or is there room for flexibility?
The apps are designed to be very effective, but flexibility can be good. You don't want to just blindly go through the motions. Even with spaced repetition, it's beneficial to engage actively with the material. Think about what you're reviewing. Try to connect it to what you already know. Explain it to yourself in your own words. The flashcard is a prompt, but your mental engagement with the answer is where the real learning happens.
So, even if a flashcard is shown at a scheduled interval, I should still put effort into recalling and understanding the answer, not just passively recognizing it.
Exactly. The apps provide the schedule, but you provide the focused cognitive effort. What are some of the benefits you're starting to see for yourself, Lisa, by thinking about using spaced repetition?
Well, for starters, it sounds like it could save me a lot of time in the long run. Instead of having to relearn things repeatedly, I'd be building a more permanent understanding. It also feels less daunting than trying to memorize huge amounts of information all at once. It breaks it down into manageable review sessions. And honestly, the idea of less forgetting is very appealing.
Those are all excellent points. The efficiency gains are significant. You spend less time reviewing forgotten material, and more time learning new things or consolidating what you've already mastered. This means you can cover more ground over time and feel more confident in your knowledge. It's about working smarter, not just harder.
Working smarter is definitely the goal. Now, you mentioned that the intervals gradually increase. What happens if I miss a review session? Does the whole system fall apart?
Most spaced repetition systems are quite resilient. If you miss a scheduled review, the algorithm will typically reschedule it for you. It might just bring that card up a bit sooner in your next review session, or it might adjust the subsequent intervals. The goal is consistency, but a missed session isn't the end of the world. Just get back on track as soon as you can.
That's reassuring to know. It makes the system feel more like a supportive tool rather than a rigid master. So, to recap, spaced repetition involves reviewing information at increasing time intervals precisely when you're about to forget it. This makes the memory stronger and more durable. We can implement this using digital flashcard apps, breaking down complex information into smaller, testable chunks.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. We're essentially actively engaging with our memories at the optimal moments to combat the natural forgetting curve. This isn't just about memorizing facts. It's about building deep, lasting understanding. By strategically revisiting information, we're not just learning, we're truly consolidating knowledge. This technique, when combined with active recall, forms a powerful duo for anyone committed to lifelong learning.
It really does sound like a revolution, Alex. A much more effective and less frustrating way to learn and remember.
Absolutely. And it's applicable to virtually any subject you want to learn. Next episode, we'll explore how to move beyond just absorbing information and develop disciplined media habits that support, rather than hinder, our learning journey. Next episode, disciplined media habits for learners. Welcome back. Last time we explored spaced repetition. Now let's tackle disciplined media habits.
Oh, I'm so glad we're tackling this, Alex. It feels like our attention is constantly being pulled in a million different directions. Between social media notifications, the endless news cycle, and all the streaming services, it's a wonder we can focus on anything for more than a few minutes.
Exactly, Lisa. And that's precisely the challenge. Our brains are quite adaptable, but the environment we've created with modern media is a formidable opponent to deep, focused learning. Think about it like this. Learning is like building a sturdy house. It requires sustained effort, focus, and the right materials. Now, imagine trying to build that house while a constant, noisy parade is marching right through your construction site, distracting every worker and knocking over your tools. That's what unfettered media consumption can do to our learning process.
That's a great analogy. So, how do we manage that parade? What are some practical steps we can take to create media habits that actually support our learning rather than derail it?
The first and most crucial step is awareness. We need to become detectives of our own media consumption. When you find yourself mindlessly scrolling, ask yourself, what am I actually gaining from this right now? Is this moving me closer to a learning goal? Or is it simply a distraction, a hit of momentary novelty? Often, we're not even aware of how much time we're passively consuming content that doesn't enrich us.
I can definitely relate to that. There are times I'll pick up my phone for one quick thing, and then suddenly, 30 minutes have vanished into a rabbit hole of memes and trending videos. So, after becoming aware, what's next?
Next, we need to get intentional. This means actively curating your media intake, not just letting it wash over you. Instead of randomly clicking on recommended videos or articles, be deliberate about your choices. If you're trying to learn about a specific topic, actively seek out reputable sources for that topic. Think of it as shopping for groceries. You wouldn't just grab whatever's on the shelf. You'd look for the specific ingredients you need for your meal.
So, rather than passively consuming whatever a platform suggests, we should proactively search for educational content. That makes sense. But what about the constant barrage of notifications? They're designed to pull us away.
On notifications, they're the marching band of our attention parade. The most effective strategy here is to turn them off or at least severely limit them. For social media apps, news alerts, and even email, consider disabling all non-essential notifications. If you need to check these platforms, do it on your own terms at designated times rather than allowing them to interrupt your focus. Think of it as scheduling your distractions rather than letting them schedule you.
Scheduling distractions, I like that. It puts you back in control. And I imagine this applies to our physical environment too, not just our digital one.
Absolutely. Creating a dedicated learning space is incredibly important. This doesn't mean you need a separate study room, but even designating a specific corner of a room for focused work can make a significant difference. When you sit down in that space, it signals to your brain that it's time to concentrate. And in that space, try to minimize other stimuli. If possible, keep your phone out of sight and out of reach.
That's a good point about the mental association. Our environment can really prime us for certain types of behavior. So, we're talking about awareness, intentionality, controlling notifications, and creating a focused environment. What about the sheer volume of content out there? It can feel overwhelming to even know where to start.
That's where building a personal learning curriculum, which we touched on earlier, becomes vital. When you have clear learning goals and a structured plan, it's easier to filter out irrelevant information. You're not just consuming media, you're consuming media with a purpose. Imagine you're a chef preparing a specific dish. You know you need tomatoes, basil, and garlic. You don't just wander through the market grabbing random produce. You seek out those specific ingredients. Your learning goals are your recipe.
Right? So having that defined curriculum acts as a filter for all the noise. It helps us say no to things that don't fit our current learning path. Any thoughts on how to manage the appeal of entertainment versus education? Sometimes, a compelling novel or an exciting movie can feel more immediately rewarding than a dense academic article.
That's a very common challenge, and it relates to how our brains seek immediate gratification. Here's a strategy: blend your media diet intentionally. It's not about complete abstinence from entertainment, but about balance and integration. You can, for example, listen to educational podcasts during your commute or while doing chores, reserving your more focused time for deeper dives. Or you can use entertainment as a reward. Finish a chapter in your textbook, then allow yourself an episode of a show or a chapter of a novel.
So, it's about making entertainment a deliberate part of the plan, perhaps as a break or a reward, rather than an unplanned escape. That seems much more sustainable.
Precisely. And consider the quality of the media you consume very carefully. The internet is a vast ocean filled with both treasures and trash. Seek out well-researched articles, reputable audiobooks, high-quality documentaries, and lectures from trusted experts. Be critical of superficial content that prioritizes clickbait over substance. A good rule of thumb is to ask yourself, is this content designed to inform me, or to merely entertain or provoke a reaction?
That's a powerful question to ask. It reminds me of the importance of critical thinking, which we'll undoubtedly explore more later. So, to recap our strategies for disciplined media habits: first, awareness of our current consumption patterns. Second, intentionality in seeking out valuable and relevant content. Third, controlling notifications to prevent constant interruptions. Fourth, creating a dedicated learning space to signal focus. Fifth, having a clear learning curriculum to act as a filter. And finally, balancing entertainment with educational content and critically evaluating the quality of what we consume.
You got it, Lisa. And I'd add one more essential element: scheduled media breaks. Just as we schedule time for focused learning, it's also beneficial to schedule periods where you intentionally disconnect. This could be an hour each evening, a full afternoon on the weekend, or even a digital detox day once a month. This allows your brain to rest and prevents burnout. It's like letting the construction site clear for a while so the workers can recharge.
Scheduled breaks, yes. That acknowledges that we need downtime too. It's not about perpetual motion. It's about intelligent, sustainable engagement. And thinking about this from a broader perspective, these disciplined media habits aren't just for academics. They apply to anyone wanting to learn a new skill, stay informed, or simply engage more deeply with the world around them.
Absolutely. By cultivating these habits, we're essentially reclaiming our attention, which is one of the most valuable resources we have. We're moving from being passive recipients of information to active architects of our own learning journey. It's about making our media work for us rather than against us.
It really is. It's about being intentional in a world that constantly tries to be distracting. Thank you, Alex. That was incredibly insightful. It gives me a lot to think about and practical steps to implement.
My pleasure, Lisa. And for our listeners, I encourage you to try out just one of these strategies this week. Pick one thing, turn off notifications for a specific app, or schedule a short media-free period, and see how it feels. Small changes can lead to significant shifts in your ability to focus and learn.
Great advice. So, to quickly summarize what we've covered today, we discussed the pervasive challenge of modern media to our learning, and we outlined key strategies including awareness, intentionality, controlling notifications, creating a focused environment, using our learning curriculum as a filter, balancing entertainment, critically evaluating content quality, and scheduling media breaks. These habits are crucial for anyone serious about self-education.
That's a perfect wrap-up. This episode explores how to manage distractions from social media, news cycles, and other digital content while intentionally seeking out valuable educational material. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to Never Stop Learning. Today, we're exploring the power of the group.
It's true, Alex. Individual learning is vital, but learning alongside others is special.
Exactly. This ties back to episode 3 in building your personal curriculum. A community can help you find and refine that curriculum.
So, what exactly are learning communities? It sounds academic, but I'm guessing it's broader.
It is. Think of any group united by a common learning interest. Online forums, book clubs, study groups, professional organizations, all count. The key is shared purpose and interaction.
So, it's about active engagement, not just passive listening.
Precisely. The benefits are manifold. First, diverse perspectives. Someone else's angle can unlock your understanding when you hit a roadblock. They might explain it in a way that finally clicks.
That makes sense. It's like having multiple instructors or peers offering insights. It provides clarity when you're stuck.
And beyond clarity, there's accountability. Knowing others share your goal gently pushes you forward. If you commit to sharing your understanding by next week's meeting, you'll prepare thoroughly.
That's a great point about accountability. It's easy to let things slide when you're only accountable to yourself. So, where do you find these communities?
The digital age has made it easier. Online platforms are full of them. For programming, there are popular discussion boards, chat groups, and communication channels. For language learning, apps and forums connect you with speakers and learners.
So you identify your interest, then search keywords on platforms like Reddit or the general web.
Exactly. And don't forget in-person groups. Look for local meetups related to hobbies or professional interests. Libraries and community centers often host study groups. Sometimes, a bulletin board notice can start a new group.
So, I've found a community. How do I maximize my engagement? How to be a good community member and learner?
Absolutely. First, participate actively. Don't just observe. Ask questions, even simple ones. Others likely have the same questions. Share your thoughts, even if they're not fully formed. This sparks discussion and deepens understanding. You are building a shared understanding.
That's crucial. Asking questions shows you're engaged, and also helps the group clarify concepts for everyone. What about contributing your own knowledge?
That's the next big step, contributing your knowledge. When you share what you've learned, it solidifies your understanding. It's a powerful way to reinforce your own learning. Think of it as that concept we discussed, teaching to learn. Explaining a concept to others forces you to organize your thoughts and identify any gaps in your own knowledge.
So, by explaining something, I'm actually teaching myself more deeply through that explanation. That's a fantastic connection back to earlier principles.
It really is. And this leads to mutual growth. You're not just receiving information, you're contributing to the collective knowledge pool. This creates a positive feedback loop. As you contribute, others might offer feedback or build upon your idea, leading to even greater insights.
It sounds like this active contribution also helps refine your personal curriculum from episode 3. You might discover new subtopics or areas you're particularly interested in contributing to.
Precisely. Communities can expose you to aspects of a subject you hadn't considered. You might be interested in learning guitar, for example, and in a guitar forum, you might start discussing music theory, songwriting, or even sound engineering, pushing your curriculum expansion.
That makes so much sense. It's the serendipity of learning, amplified by group interaction.
And speaking of your curriculum, many communities have shared resources. People recommend books, articles, courses, or tools that they've found valuable. This can save you immense time and effort in the choosing your learning resources wisely phase we discussed in episode 4.
Oh, that's a huge benefit. Instead of spending hours sifting through potentially mediocre resources, you get curated recommendations from people who have already done the digging and know what works.
Exactly. And these recommendations are often accompanied by context. Someone might say, I found this book incredibly helpful for understanding X, but it's a bit dense if you're new to Y. That nuanced feedback is invaluable for resource selection.
So, finding a community isn't just about finding people, it's about finding a collective intelligence that can guide your learning journey more efficiently.
You've hit the nail on the head. Now, let's talk about navigating potential challenges. Not all communities are created equal. Some might be overly dominated by experts, making it intimidating for beginners. Others might lack structure and devolve into off-topic discussions.
That's a good point. How do you maintain your focus and ensure you're getting the most out of a community, even if it has some rough edges?
One strategy is to seek out communities that clearly state their purpose and guidelines. Look for a welcoming atmosphere for newcomers. If a community feels unwelcoming or unproductive after a reasonable trial period, don't be afraid to move on. Remember learning from mistakes? Sometimes, a community choice can be a mistake that helps you learn what works for you.
So, a bit of trial and error, and trusting your gut about where you feel most comfortable and stimulated.
Precisely. And when you find a good one, actively cultivate your relationships there. Get to know other members, support their learning, and celebrate their successes. This creates a positive and supportive learning environment for everyone. It turns a collection of individuals into a cohesive unit driving towards shared growth.
It sounds like this is where the habit loop from episode 13 really comes into play. Participating in a community can become a positive habit that reinforces your other learning habits.
It absolutely can. The social aspect, the shared progress, the intrinsic motivation that comes from helping others, these are powerful catalysts for habit formation. Imagine your learning routine, including active participation in a favorite online group or a weekly study session.
And for those of us who struggle with motivation, as we discussed in episode 11, having that external support system within a community can make all the difference in staying on track, especially when facing inevitable challenges.
Absolutely. When you're feeling demotivated, seeing others persevere can be incredibly inspiring. And remember, you don't need to be an expert to contribute. Sharing your journey, your struggles, and your small victories can be just as valuable to someone else as sharing advanced knowledge. It offers a relatable perspective.
So, it's about finding that balance then? Balancing individual learning techniques with the power of collective intelligence and support, and actively contributing to that collective intelligence.
That's the perfect summary, Lisa. Learning communities aren't a replacement for your personal study, but rather a powerful amplifier. They provide diverse viewpoints, accountability, curated resources, and a supportive environment that can accelerate your progress and deepen your understanding.
It's like going from mastering individual tools to building something amazing with a skilled crew.
Well said. By actively engaging with learning communities, you not only enhance your own knowledge, but also contribute to a richer, more collaborative learning landscape for everyone involved. It truly embodies the spirit of lifelong learning.
Fantastic insights, Alex. It really highlights how interconnected effective learning can be.
Indeed. So, make it a point to seek out and engage with communities that align with your learning goals. You might be surprised at how much they can transform your journey.
And next time, we're going to delve into a skill that's crucial for maximizing our learning from any source, including these communities, asking the right questions.
Get ready to sharpen your inquiry skills. Thanks for listening. Welcome back. We've been building a strong foundation for self-education.
Indeed, Alex. Last time, we explored the power of learning communities in episode 8. Remember how discussing ideas with others can spark new insights?
Absolutely, Lisa. Today, we're focusing on a skill that amplifies both individual learning and group discussions, asking the right questions. This is episode 9, and we'll explore how to. Welcome back to Never Stop Learning. Last time, we dove deep into the power of asking the right questions to truly enrich our comprehension. Today, we're tackling something equally vital, making all that learned information truly stick. We're talking about consolidation and application, the crucial steps that turn raw knowledge into usable skill.
Exactly, Alex. It's no good absorbing a mountain of information if it just floats around in our heads without ever becoming a part of us. We need to make it useful, right? So, how do we move from just knowing something to truly understanding and using it?
That's the million-dollar question, Lisa. And it really starts with consolidation. Think of your brain like a busy workshop. You brought in all these new tools and materials. That's the information you've learned. Consolidation is the process of organizing those materials, putting them in their proper places, and perhaps even refining them so they're ready for use.
So, it's like tidying up the workshop after a big delivery? That makes sense. We can't build anything if everything's just piled up haphazardly. What?
Welcome back to Never Stop Learning. Today, we're diving into staying motivated.
It's so easy to start strong, but keeping that momentum going is tough. What are common traps people fall into?
Vague goals are a big one. If your goal is just learn to code, that's incredibly overwhelming and hard to measure. Instead, aim for specifics like learn Python basics to automate a spreadsheet task this month. That's like climbing a mountain with a clear path marked by checkpoints, rather than just looking at the summit from afar.
So, breaking down those large aspirations into smaller, actionable steps, just like we discussed when building your personal curriculum, is absolutely key. Those small wins are like little breadcrumbs guiding you through the motivation maze.
Exactly. And don't forget to celebrate those small wins. Acknowledging your progress, Even if it's just completing a difficult lesson or understanding a new concept, helps your brain associate learning with satisfaction. Another common killer is comparison. It's so easy to look at someone who seems to be miles ahead and get discouraged. You really need to focus on your own unique journey.
That makes perfect sense. Comparison truly steals the joy and momentum from learning. What other common hurdles do people face?
A lack of a consistent routine. Many people try to learn only when they feel like it, which leaves their progress entirely at the mercy of their emotions. Scheduling your learning time, even for short, focused bursts, like you an important appointment, helps build that discipline.
That's a great point. That daily commitment builds discipline, acting like the steady engine powering the learning journey, rather than just relying on the fleeting spark of initial motivation.
Precisely. Now, for some practical strategies to boost and maintain your motivation. First, and this is crucial, reconnect with your why. Why did you start learning this particular subject in the first place? Take a moment to picture your future self benefiting from this knowledge or skill.
That helps you remember that the current effort is a bridge to a better future you. What's the second strategy?
Embrace struggle. Learning isn't always supposed to be easy. In fact, when you encounter challenges, view them as opportunities to grow stronger. It's like building muscle. You need resistance to get stronger.
So, reframe that discomfort not as a sign of failure, but as an essential stepping stone in the learning process. I really like that perspective.
Next, leverage accountability. Having someone else involved can make a big difference. This could be a study buddy, a mentor, or even a public commitment to a friend or online group. This external pressure can encourage follow through.
Even a small commitment to a friend can provide that gentle nudge you need to keep going when your own internal drive might falter.
Indeed. Also, remember to vary your learning methods. If you're tired of reading, switch to a podcast, an audiobook, or a video lecture. Monotony is a motivation killer.
Variety keeps our brains engaged and makes the learning process feel fresh and exciting rather than like a tedious chore.
And keep a progress log. This is something we touched on earlier, but it bears repeating. Jotting down your achievements, no matter how small, creates tangible evidence of how far you've come. This is especially powerful when you start to feel stuck or discouraged.
A concrete record of successes is a powerful antidote to demotivation. This is incredibly practical advice, Alex.
Finally, and perhaps most importantly, don't be too harsh on yourself if you slip up. The goal of lifelong learning isn't perfection. It's about getting back on track quickly. Just take the next small step after a setback.
So, to quickly recap the key takeaway points for staying motivated, avoid those vague, overwhelming goals, celebrate your wins, don't fall into the comparison trap, establish consistent learning routines, always reconnect with your original why, embrace challenges as growth opportunities, use accountability partners or groups, vary your learning methods to keep things interesting, diligently log your progress, and most importantly, be kind and forgiving to yourself when you stumble.
Motivation can be the initial spark that gets you started, but habit and discipline are the engine that keeps you moving forward. Keep building that engine, Lisa, and you'll find yourself continuously moving forward on your learning journey.
Thank you, Alex. That's a perfect and encouraging note to end this episode on.
My pleasure, Lisa. Next episode, we'll explore how to transform those inevitable stumbles into fuel for your journey by learning effectively from mistakes. Welcome back. Last time we explored how to keep your learning motivation high. Now let's tackle a topic many find daunting, learning from mistakes.
Mistakes. They feel so negative, don't they? Like a red X on your progress.
Exactly. But what if we flip that perspective? What if mistakes aren't roadblocks, but signposts pointing us towards a better path? Today, we're reframing failure as a critical ingredient for growth, especially in self-education.
Turning failure into fuel. I like that. So, when we stumble while learning something new, what's the first thing we should do?
The absolute first step is to resist the urge to let frustration or shame take over. Instead, acknowledge the mistake without judgment. Think of it like a scientist observing an experiment. They record what happened, good or bad, with equal curiosity.
Curiosity over condemnation. That's a powerful shift. So, if I'm trying to learn a new language and I keep mispronouncing a word, instead of getting upset, I should just notice it and be curious about why it's happening?
Precisely. That curiosity then leads to analysis. Ask yourself, what specifically went wrong? Was it a misheard sound? A misunderstanding of grammar? Did I rush the pronunciation? Pinpointing the exact nature of the error is crucial for fixing it. It's not just about knowing you made a mistake, but understanding its anatomy.
So, it's like dissecting the problem. If I'm learning to code and my program doesn't work, I shouldn't just say it's broken. I need to figure out why it's broken. Is it a typo, a logical error, or something else?
That's a perfect analogy, Lisa. For instance, imagine you're learning to bake. You follow a recipe for cookies, but they come out flat and greasy. A mistake has occurred. Now we analyze. Was the oven temperature too low? Did I use too much butter? Did I overmix the dough? Each of these is a specific point of failure that can be corrected.
And once we've analyzed it, what comes next?
The next step is to strategize. Based on your analysis, what will you do differently next time? For the cookies, you might decide to preheat the oven for longer, measure the butter more accurately, or chill the dough. For coding, you might reread that specific line of code, consult documentation, or try a different approach to that logic. This is where the mistake becomes truly valuable. It informs your improved strategy.
This sounds a lot like building resilience, doesn't it? Every time you recover from a mistake and try again, you become stronger.
Absolutely. And resilience is a cornerstone of lifelong learning. Think about it. If you give up after the first error, you never get to the point where you truly master a skill. Every expert you admire has a long history of making mistakes, analyzing them, and learning from them. J.K. Rowling's initial manuscripts were rejected multiple times. Thomas Edison famously said he hadn't failed. He'd just found 10,000 ways that wouldn't work.
That's another great example. It reframes the failure into a process of elimination. So, the key is not to avoid mistakes, but to create a constructive process around them.
Exactly. We want to cultivate a growth mindset, a concept popularized by psychologist Carol Dweck. People with a growth mindset believe their abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. They embrace challenges, learn from criticism, and persist in the face of setbacks. Failure, in this view, isn't a sign of intellectual inferiority, but an opportunity to learn and grow.
And a fixed mindset, I assume, would be the opposite, believing your abilities are innate and unchangeable, making mistakes a threat to your self-image.
Precisely. Someone with a fixed mindset might see a mistake as confirmation of their inadequacy, and they'll avoid challenging tasks to prevent further proof of their limitations.
That's such a limiting way to live and learn. So, how do we actively introduce this growth mindset into our learning journey?
One practical way is to reframe the language we use. Instead of saying, I'm bad at math, say, I'm finding math challenging right now, and I need to try a different approach. Instead of this is too hard for me, try this is challenging for me, and I'm going to work through it. These subtle linguistic shifts can have a profound impact on how we perceive ourselves and our capacity to learn.
I can see how that would make a difference. It's like giving yourself permission to struggle a bit.
It is. And it's also about celebrating the process, not just the outcome. Did you try a new learning technique that helped you understand a difficult concept, even if it wasn't perfect? Did you spend an hour focused on a tough problem, even if you didn't solve it completely? These efforts are victories in themselves, building your learning muscles.
So, we should also focus on acknowledging our efforts and the micro progress we make.
Absolutely. Another strategy is to intentionally seek out feedback. When you're learning a new skill, ask for constructive criticism from mentors, peers, or even online communities. This feedback is invaluable because it often highlights blind spots you might have missed on your own.
Asking for feedback can be scary, though. You're opening yourself up to criticism.
It can be, but remember our initial reframing. Criticism is not an attack, it's data. When you receive feedback, treat it as an opportunity to learn. Say, "Thank you for pointing that out. Can you tell me more about X?" This shows you're receptive and eager to improve. The goal is to extract the learning, not to defend yourself.
This makes me think about how we often avoid topics we're not good at. We stick to our strengths. But learning from mistakes encourages us to tackle those very areas.
Exactly. It's about embracing discomfort. The most significant learning often happens just outside our comfort zone. When we make mistakes in these challenging areas, it forces us to confront our limitations and develop new strategies. It's in those moments of struggle that genuine breakthroughs occur.
So, to recap, when we make a mistake while learning, we should first acknowledge it without judgment. Second, analyze the root cause specifically. Third, strategize a new approach based on that analysis. And fourth, embrace this as an opportunity for growth, cultivating a mindset that sees challenges and setbacks as learning tools.
You've summarized it perfectly, Lisa. And remember, this process builds not just knowledge, but also crucial life skills like perseverance, adaptability, and self-awareness. It transforms learning from a potentially frustrating experience into a dynamic and rewarding journey of continuous improvement.
It really does change everything. Instead of fearing errors, we can start seeing them as valuable teachers.
That's the ultimate goal. By learning to embrace our mistakes, analyze them, and use them as fuel, we unlock a deeper and more effective way to learn and to live.
Fantastic insights. I feel much more prepared to face my learning challenges head on now.
Wonderful. Next time, we'll be exploring how to build sustainable learning routines.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks for listening. Welcome back to Never Stop Learning. We've explored how to turn failure into fuel for our learning journey. Now, let's build routines that stick.
We've covered active recall, spaced repetition, and learning communities. But how do we make these techniques a consistent part of our lives?
That's where the power of habit comes in. Today, we're dissecting the habit loop to create sustainable learning routines. Think of it as building learning muscles so they're strong, regardless of motivation.
The habit loop sounds like a scientific way to understand why we do things without thinking.
Exactly. The habit loop has three parts: a cue, which is a trigger, a routine, the behavior itself, and a reward, which helps your brain remember the loop for the future.
Let's say I want to do active recall for language learning every day. What does that habit loop look like?
Your cue could be simple. For instance, after you finish your morning coffee, that's your cue. It's a pre-existing routine that signals it's time for the next thing.
So, the coffee is the trigger. Then, what's the routine?
The routine is the learning activity. In your case, opening your flashcard app and spending 10 minutes doing active recall for new vocabulary. You're actively trying to remember.
And the reward?
The reward can be internal satisfaction from completing your goal, seeing streaks grow in your app, or noticing tangible progress in recalling words. That mastery is a powerful reward that reinforces the loop.
I see. The cue leads to the routine, and the reward solidifies it, making me likely to do it again. It becomes automatic.
Precisely. You can engineer these loops for any learning goal. We've discussed techniques like active recall and spaced repetition. Now we're building the habit of using them.
So, for someone incorporating spaced repetition, What might their habit loop look like?
Imagine learning history. Your cue could be a specific calendar notification every 4 days. That notification is the trigger.
And the routine?
The routine is to review material due for spaced repetition, going back to notes or flashcards from a few days ago, testing yourself, or rereading key sections. This reinforces, not learns, new things.
And the reward for that?
The reward is increased retention. You'll find information feels more familiar and easier to recall. It's the opposite of cramming. The reward is seeing knowledge solidify over time, making it feel less like a chore and more like building a strong foundation.
It's like consistently watering a plant. It grows stronger. Spaced repetition is consistent care for your brain's knowledge.
That's a fantastic analogy. And remember our discussion on active learning? The habit loop helps us activate those techniques. A passive learner might read a chapter and be done. An active learner, using the habit loop, might have a cue like finishing a chapter, followed by a routine of summarizing key points or creating practice questions.
And the reward is the deeper understanding from that active processing, right?
Exactly. The reward is that aha moment clarity of thought. It reinforces that active engagement leads to better, lasting learning. We train our brain to associate a trigger with a productive learning activity and reward that activity.
So, to build a sustainable learning routine, we need to identify or create cues, define the routine, and ensure a satisfying reward.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate making it easy. When starting, break down the routine into small, manageable steps. If your goal is 30 minutes of reading, start with 10. Make the barrier to entry low.
That's crucial. We can't go from zero to a marathon runner overnight. The same applies to learning habits.
You've got it. Another tip for strengthening the habit loop is consistency with your cues. If you decide after brushing your teeth is your cue for a quick review, do it every morning. Predictability is key. The more reliable the cue, the more automatic the routine.
And what if we miss a day? How does that apply to habit loops?
Missing a day doesn't break the habit loop. It's a missed link. Acknowledge it, understand why it happened, and get back on track the next day. Don't let perfection be the enemy of progress.
So, it's about resilience. If the loop breaks, we just consciously restart it.
Precisely. Think about how many daily actions are governed by habit loops. Waking up, getting dressed, commuting. We can harness that same psychological mechanism for our learning.
Can we use this to build more interdisciplinary learning habits? For example, learning about AI and its historical context?
Definitely. Your cue might be finishing a key AI concept. Your routine could then be to spend 5 minutes searching for a historical parallel or related philosophical idea. The reward is the richer, more nuanced understanding you gain by connecting disparate fields.
This is powerful because we actively build a framework where new knowledge fits.
And that framework makes future learning easier. The more you practice connecting ideas, the more your brain sees those connections naturally. That's the ultimate goal when active learning becomes your second nature.
So, the habit loop is our blueprint for making learning sustainable, a cue to trigger the behavior, the routine of the learning activity, and a reward that reinforces the cycle?
That's a perfect summary. We identify a trigger, perform the learning action, and acknowledge the positive outcome. Consistently practicing this shifts learning from requiring conscious effort to becoming a natural, integrated part of our lives. It builds momentum, making each learning session feel a little easier.
It's about making learning a part of who we are, not just something we do.
Exactly. This is the foundation for becoming a true lifelong learner. Next time, we'll be expanding our horizons even further by exploring the exciting world of interdisciplinary learning. Next episode, expanding your horizons, interdisciplinary learning. Welcome back to Never Stop Learning. Last time, we explored the powerful benefits of interdisciplinary learning, how connecting different fields can spark innovation. Today, we're diving into a massively important aspect of modern self-education, navigating the digital landscape and mastering online learning platforms.
Ah, the internet. It's a treasure trove of knowledge, Alex, but it can also feel like a bit of a wild west. So much out there. How do we even begin to sort through it all, especially when it comes to learning?
That's exactly the challenge, Lisa. The sheer volume of online courses, tutorials, webinars, and educational content is staggering. We need strategies to make sense of it and ensure we're using these resources effectively, not just passively consuming information. Remember in episode 4, when we talked about smart selection of learning resources? This is the digital evolution of that conversation.
Right. It's not just about finding any resource, but the right ones. So, Alex, where do we start when it comes to online learning platforms? What are the big players, and how are they different?
Great question. You can broadly categorize them into a few types. First, you have the massive open online course, or MOOC, providers. Think platforms like Coursera, edX, and FutureLearn. These often partner with universities and institutions to offer courses, sometimes even leading to certificates or specializations.
So, those are like the digital version of taking a university class, but more accessible?
Precisely. They're great for structured learning on a specific subject, often with lectures, readings, assignments, and peer interaction. Then you have platforms that are more focused on specific skills, like Udemy or Skillshare. These tend to have a wider variety of shorter, more practical courses taught by industry professionals. You might find courses on graphic design, coding, photography, or even creative writing.
I've definitely spent time on Udemy looking for practical skills. And Skillshare seems to have a lot of creative arts content. That makes sense. What about free resources?
Absolutely. Platforms like Khan Academy are fantastic for foundational knowledge, especially in STEM subjects, but they offer much more. YouTube, of course, is an unparalleled source of free video content on virtually any topic imaginable. Then there are more niche platforms like Duolingo for languages, or perhaps specialized coding platforms like Codecademy, which offer interactive learning environments.
It sounds like the first step is to identify what you want to learn and then find the platform that best suits that goal. Is that right?
That's the crucial starting point. But once you've chosen a platform, how do you select the right course? This is where we apply those principles of smart resource selection we discussed earlier. Look at the course description carefully. What are the learning objectives? Will they teach you what you want to know?
And how do you know if the instructor is good?
Read reviews. This is vital. See what other students are saying about the instructor's clarity, engagement, and the overall quality of the course material. Don't just look at the star rating, read the comments. Are there recurring positive or negative themes? Also, check the course syllabus or outline. Does it cover the topics in a logical progression?
That's a good reminder. I sometimes get dazzled by a course title and forget to check the details. What about the format of the learning? Some courses are all video, others have a lot of reading.
Exactly. This ties back to your personal learning style and your media habits, which we touched on in episode 7. If you learn best by watching and listening, a video-heavy course will be ideal. If you prefer to read and take notes, look for courses with more text-based materials. And for those who thrive on doing, interactive platforms are your best bet.
So we've identified a platform and a course. Now, how do we make sure we're actually learning and not just passively watching videos or scrolling through content? This is where active learning comes in, right?
Absolutely. Online learning platforms offer a unique opportunity to practice active recall and spaced repetition. When you're watching a video or reading a lesson, pause frequently. Ask yourself, what did I just learn? Can I explain this in my own words? Try to summarize the key points without looking back at the material. This is active recall in action.
That's a great practical tip. So, after watching a segment, close the video or the tab and try to jot down the main ideas.
Precisely. And for spaced repetition, many platforms have quizzes or assessments. Use these not just to test yourself, but to identify areas where you need to revisit the material. You can also supplement by creating your own flashcards or notes and reviewing them at increasing intervals. The content is digital, but the learning principles remain the same.
It's about engaging with the material actively, not just letting it wash over you. And I imagine these platforms can be a great way to build learning communities too, right? We talked about that in episode 8.
Definitely. Many MOOCs and even some skill-based platforms have dedicated forums or discussion boards. This is invaluable for asking questions when you're stuck, sharing insights with other learners, and even collaborating on projects. Don't underestimate the power of learning from and with others, even in a digital environment.
So, we're not totally alone in our digital learning journey. We can still connect with people. Beyond course forums, are there other ways to use these platforms to expand our horizons, as we discussed in episode 14 on interdisciplinary learning?
Oh, absolutely. The beauty of online platforms is the sheer breadth of topics available. If you're studying history, you might find an online course on art history or even ancient civilizations that complements your primary subject. You can easily discover adjacent fields that enrich your understanding of your main area of interest. It's about drawing connections.
That's a fantastic point. It's not just about deep dives into one subject, but also about seeing how different disciplines intersect. It's like we talked about with building your personal curriculum in episode 3, the digital world makes it so much easier to curate that diverse curriculum.
Exactly. Now, let's address another aspect, making these online resources work with our other learning habits. In episode 7, we talked about disciplined media habits. Online learning platforms are a significant part of our digital media consumption, so we need to approach them mindfully.
Meaning, don't let them become a distraction?
Precisely. Set dedicated times for online learning, just as you would for reading a book or attending a lecture. Turn off notifications from other apps and websites to minimize distractions. Be intentional about your learning sessions. If a platform is constantly tempting you with unrelated content, perhaps it's time to revisit your disciplined media habits and create boundaries.
That's so important. It's easy to fall down rabbit holes online. So, to recap this section, we're looking at identifying the right platform based on our learning goals, carefully selecting courses by checking descriptions and reviews, and then actively engaging with the material through techniques like active recall and spaced repetition, perhaps even leveraging discussion forums.
You've got it, Lisa. And always remember to integrate these online resources with your existing learning strategies and maintain those disciplined media habits we've discussed. Think of online platforms as powerful tools in your self-education toolkit, not as entire workshops.
Tools that require skillful use. What are some potential pitfalls we should watch out for when using these platforms?
A big one is the illusion of competence. Just because you've watched all the videos and passed the quizzes doesn't mean you truly understand the material and can apply it. This is why active recall and trying to teach someone else, which we'll cover next episode, are so crucial. Another pitfall is feeling overwhelmed. When faced with too many options, it's easy to get paralyzed by choice. That's where revisiting episode 4 on smart selection becomes essential.
So, a curated approach is key, even within these vast digital spaces. It's about quality over quantity.
Exactly. And finally, don't be afraid to experiment. Try different platforms, different course styles, and different instructors. What works for one person might not work for another. Your ideal online learning approach might evolve over time. The digital landscape is constantly changing, so adaptability is key.
That's a great way to summarize it, Alex. We've got so many incredible resources at our fingertips now. It's about learning to navigate them wisely and use them to our advantage in becoming lifelong learners.
That's the goal. So, to quickly recap what we've covered today, we've explored the landscape of online learning platforms, from MOOCs to skill-specific sites. We've emphasized the importance of smart selection, both of platforms and individual courses, by looking at objectives, reviews, and syllabi. We've reinforced the need for active engagement through recall and repetition, and the benefit of community features. And crucially, We've stressed how to integrate these digital tools with disciplined media habits and maintain a mindful approach, avoiding the illusion of competence and being adaptable to new options.
It's a lot to take in, but it's so practical. Every learner can start applying these tips today.
Indeed. And building on this idea of solidifying knowledge, next time we'll be delving into one of the most powerful learning techniques out there, teaching to learn. Next episode, teaching to learn, solidifying knowledge through explanation. Welcome back. Last time we covered navigating online learning platforms. Now, let's tackle teaching to learn.
Teaching to learn? It sounds like a lot of extra work, Alex. I thought the point was for me to learn.
It does sound like that, but it's a fantastic way to solidify your own understanding. When you have to explain something to someone else, you can't just passively absorb information. You have to truly grasp it. This forces your brain to organize the material, identify the core concepts, and articulate them clearly.
So, it's like a more active form of studying, where you're anticipating questions and trying to make the information accessible.
Exactly. And it ties back to active recall from episode 5 and consolidation from episode 10. Remember how active recall involves actively retrieving information from memory? Teaching to learn is a supercharged version of that. You're constantly testing yourself. Do I really understand this? Can I explain it without just looking at my notes?
And how does that connect to consolidation?
Consolidation is about strengthening new memories for the long term. When you teach, you're rehearsing, rephrasing, and connecting ideas. This repeated engagement and active processing are crucial for locking those memories in.
Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal. What does this teaching to learn strategy actually look like in practice? Do I need to find an actual student?
Not necessarily. You can imagine explaining it to a friend, a beginner, or even a rubber duck. The key is the act of preparation and explanation itself.
A rubber duck? I love that. So, I pick a topic I've been learning, and then I pretend I have to explain it to my rubber duck?
Precisely. Let's say you've been studying photosynthesis. You gather your notes and think, how would I explain photosynthesis to someone who knows absolutely nothing about plants?
So, I need to break it down into simple terms, avoid jargon, and maybe come up with some analogies.
You've hit the nail on the head. You'll identify the absolutely essential components, or the core ideas you must convey. This forces you to sift through what's crucial and what's secondary detail.
That's a great point. Sometimes I get bogged down in the minor details and lose sight of the main concepts.
It's a common pitfall. When you prepare to teach, you're conducting a deep dive. You'll ask yourself, what are the key terms? How do they relate? You start to build a mental map of the topic.
And then you have to translate that map into words that make sense.
Yes, you have to find clear, concise language. If you find yourself stumbling over a definition or using overly technical terms, that's a red flag. It signals that you might not have a complete grasp of that specific part.
So, it's like a diagnostic tool for my own learning. If I can't explain it simply, I don't truly understand it.
Exactly. It's a powerful self-assessment. You might reread a section or consult different resources to clarify your own understanding so you can explain it effectively. For instance, if you're explaining photosynthesis, you might realize you need to explain what a chloroplast is first. You're not just learning facts, you're learning how to present them logically.
That also involves thinking about the structure of the explanation. You wouldn't just start spouting facts.
Absolutely. You think about a good introduction, a logical flow, and a summary. You might even think about potential questions someone might ask and prepare answers. This process mimics how effective teachers structure lessons.
This reminds me of the Feynman technique, a popular learning strategy. It's basically the same idea, right?
You're right, Lisa. It's very similar to the Feynman technique, named after physicist Richard Feynman. The technique involves 4 steps. Choose a concept, teach it to a child, identify gaps in your understanding, and revisit and simplify. Our teaching to learn is essentially the core of that.
So, when we say teach to learn, we're not necessarily talking about formal teaching. It's about adopting that mindset.
Precisely. And you can apply this to almost anything you're learning. Learning a new language? Imagine explaining grammar rules to a fellow student. Studying history? Prepare a mini lecture on a historical event. Learning a new software skill? Outline how to perform a specific task for a colleague.
And the more complex the topic, the more beneficial this method might be.
Indeed, for highly technical or abstract subjects, this approach is invaluable. It forces you to connect disparate pieces of information to build bridges between concepts. You might find yourself drawing diagrams or creating analogies. For example, explaining how the internet works might involve comparing data packets to postal mail.
That's a great analogy. So, for our listeners, if you're feeling like information is just washing over you, or you're struggling to retain what you're learning, try this. Pick a concept you've recently studied.
And then, imagine you have to explain it to someone else. Try to use simple language. Avoid jargon as much as possible, and if you have to use it, make sure you can define it clearly.
And as you're preparing your explanation, you'll naturally stumble. You'll realize, wait, I don't quite get how this part connects, or what exactly is the difference between X and Y?
That's the moment of insight. Those are the gaps in your knowledge. You then go back to your resources, focus on clarifying those specific points, and then try to explain them again. This iterative process of explaining, identifying gaps, and refining is incredibly powerful for deep learning.
It's like giving yourself a personalized study session where you're the teacher, the student, and the examiner all rolled into one.
Exactly. And it reinforces what we've learned about active learning. Instead of just passively consuming information, you're actively engaging with it, manipulating it, and restructuring it in your mind. This leads to much stronger retention and a deeper, more flexible understanding.
So, to recap for our listeners, teaching to learn is about preparing to explain a concept to someone else. This forces you to break down complex ideas, identify key takeaways, use clear language, and connect different pieces of information.
It's a diagnostic tool to pinpoint your own knowledge gaps, and the process of trying to explain helps consolidate that information into long-term memory. Whether you're talking to a friend, a student, or even an inanimate object, the act of teaching is a powerful way to accelerate your own learning.
It makes sense that by trying to make something clear for others, you're inherently deepening your own clarity.
And it's a skill that serves you well beyond just academic pursuits. Thinking about how to communicate complex ideas is a valuable skill in almost any profession and in life itself.
I'm definitely going to try this with some of the topics I've been struggling with. The rubber duck method seems particularly intriguing.
Give it a go. You might be surprised at how much your understanding deepens. So, that's teaching to learn, a fantastic strategy for solidifying your knowledge.
Next episode, we'll be talking about managing your most precious resource as a learner, your time.
That's right. We'll be covering episode 17, Time Management for the Lifelong Learner. Welcome back. Last time, we explored teaching to learn, a fantastic way to solidify knowledge. Today, we're tackling a challenge every lifelong learner faces, managing our time effectively.
It's so true, Alex. We're passionate about learning, but life is busy. Juggling work, family, social commitments, and carving out that precious time for books, courses, or practice can feel like an impossible puzzle.
Exactly, Lisa. And that's why we need targeted strategies. It's not just about having more time. It's about making the time we do have work harder for us. We need to be intentional about how we allocate our hours to learning.
So, where do we start? What's the first step in conquering this time challenge?
The very first step is awareness. We need to understand where our time is actually going. Think of it like tracking your expenses before you can budget. I recommend a simple time audit for a few days. Just log what you're doing hour by hour. You can use a notebook, a spreadsheet, or an app. The key is honesty.
A time audit. I can see how that would be eye-opening. I suspect I might be surprised how much time gets lost to scrolling or less productive activities.
You almost certainly will be. And once you have that data, you can identify time leaks, those pockets of time that aren't serving your learning goals. Then we can start to plug those leaks. We're aiming to reclaim that time, not to feel guilty about how we spent it before.
Okay, so we find the leaks. What do we do with the reclaimed time? How do we fit learning into a packed schedule?
This is where intentionality comes in. We need to schedule our learning. Treat it like any other important appointment on your calendar. Block out specific times for reading, for watching a lecture, for practicing a skill. The more structured it is, the more likely you are to follow through.
Like putting learn Spanish for 30 minutes right there between dentist appointment and groceries?
Precisely. And be realistic. Don't schedule 3 hours of intense study if you know you only have 30 minutes of peak mental energy after dinner. Start small, but be consistent. 30 minutes every day is far more effective than 6 hours once a month. This relates back to episode 13, Building Sustainable Learning Routines.
Consistency is key. I remember you mentioning that in relation to habit loops. So, scheduling our learning time is like creating a learning habit loop.
Exactly. We're building a cue, the scheduled time, and a routine, the actual learning activity. The reward is the progress we make and the knowledge we gain. Now, beyond just scheduling, we need to optimize the quality of that learning time.
Quality over quantity, even with time management?
Absolutely. When you sit down to learn, you need to be focused. This is where disciplined media habits, which we discussed in episode 7, become crucial. Turn off notifications. Close unnecessary tabs. Create a dedicated learning environment if possible. Minimize distractions so that your scheduled learning time is truly productive.
That makes so much sense. My phone is probably the biggest culprit for pulling me away from focused learning. I need to be more mindful of keeping it out of sight or even on airplane mode during my dedicated learning blocks.
That's a fantastic step. Another powerful technique is time boxing. This is where you allocate a fixed amount of time to a specific task and then stick to it. For example, I will spend the next 45 minutes summarizing chapter 3 of this book. When the time is up, you stop.
Time boxing. So, it prevents tasks from expanding to fill all available time, a concept often called Parkinson's Law, right?
You've got it, Lisa. Parkinson's law states that work expands to fill the time available for its completion. Time boxing fights that directly. It forces you to be efficient within that set time frame. It also helps prevent burnout because you know the task will end at a specific point.
I like that. It feels much less daunting to commit to 45 minutes of focused work than to a vague study for a while. And when it's done, it's done.
Right? Now, let's talk about energy management. You can have all the scheduled time in the world, but if you're dragging and unfocused, you won't learn effectively. We need to be smart about matching our learning tasks to our energy levels.
So, not trying to tackle a complex philosophical text right after a huge Thanksgiving dinner?
Haha, very good analogy. Generally, demanding cognitive tasks, like learning a new language or understanding complex theories, are best done when you're feeling fresh and alert. This might be first thing in the morning for some, or perhaps mid-afternoon for others.
And what about when our energy is lower?
Lower energy times are perfect for more routine or less cognitively demanding tasks. This could be reviewing notes, organizing your learning materials, listening to an educational podcast, like this one, or doing some light reading. It's about using your energy reserves wisely.
That's smart. So, I could use my commute, for example, for reviewing flashcards or listening to lectures that don't require deep critical thinking, saving the really intense study sessions for when I'm at my best.
Exactly. You're optimizing your cognitive load. Now, another challenge is procrastination. We've all been there. We know we should be learning, but we just don't.
Oh, yes. The siren song of I'll do it later.
To combat this, try the 2-minute rule. If a learning task takes less than 2 minutes to start, just do it immediately. For larger tasks, break them down into such small, manageable steps that the first step takes less than 2 minutes. The goal is to get started. The momentum will often carry you forward.
So, instead of write that essay section, it becomes open the document and write the first sentence. That feels much less intimidating.
It is. It's about lowering the activation energy required to begin. Think of it like pushing a heavy stone. The hardest part is getting it to roll. Once it's moving, it takes far less effort to keep it going. This ties back to our discussion on active recall, where the effort of retrieving information strengthens the memory. Starting a learning task is similar. The effort of starting leads to greater engagement.
That's a great way to put it. So, we've talked about awareness with time audits, scheduling, minimizing distractions, time boxing, managing energy, and the 2-minute rule. Are there any other key strategies?
Yes, one more crucial aspect, saying no. As self-educators, we might feel pressure to participate in every new learning opportunity or social event. We need to be discerning. Evaluate requests against your learning goals. If something doesn't align or will take away too much valuable learning time, politely decline.
Protecting our learning time. That's so important. It's like setting boundaries. We set boundaries for our work, and we need to set them for our learning too, to ensure it gets the attention it deserves.
Precisely. And remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. You won't implement all these techniques perfectly overnight. Be patient with yourself. Experiment with different strategies to see what works best for your unique schedule and learning style.
So, to recap for our listeners, first, understand where your time goes with a time audit. Then, schedule your learning like any other important appointment, being consistent and realistic. Optimize your learning environment to minimize distractions. Use time boxing to stay focused within set periods. Match demanding learning tasks to your peak energy levels and use lower energy times for less intensive activities. Combat procrastination with the 2-minute rule to get started. And finally, learn to say no to protect your valuable learning time.
That's a fantastic summary, Lisa. These techniques aren't about adding more stress. They're about creating space for your passion for learning to flourish amidst the demands of life. By mastering your time, you empower your lifelong learning journey.
It really does feel empowering. Knowing that we can take control of our schedules and make dedicated space for growth is incredibly motivating.
Indeed. And next time, we're going to shift our focus from managing time to managing our minds. We'll be discussing embracing nuance and developing critical thinking skills in a complex world, which builds upon our drive to learn and understand.
Looking forward to it, Alex.
Me too. Until then, keep learning. Welcome back to Never Stop Learning. Today, we're diving into critical thinking.
In today's information-saturated age, Alex, it feels like we're constantly bombarded with data, opinions, and what feels like the truth. But how do we figure out what's actually reliable, what's biased, and what truly holds up under scrutiny? That's where critical thinking comes in, right?
Absolutely, Lisa. Think about it. We've spent previous episodes talking about how to choose your learning resources wisely. That was episode 4. And building disciplined media habits to avoid drowning in the noise, back in episode 7. Critical thinking is the essential skill that sits on top of all that. It's the filter, the detective agency for your brain.
A detective agency for the brain, I like that. So, what does it really mean to think critically, especially when we're trying to learn something new?
At its core, critical thinking is about actively and skillfully conceptualizing, applying, analyzing, synthesizing, and evaluating information. Let's break that down. It means you're not just passively accepting information. You're questioning it, examining it from different angles, and forming your own reasoned judgments.
So, it's not about being negative or cynical, but about being discerning. It's about digging deeper than the surface level.
Exactly. Imagine you're trying to learn about a historical event. You read one account. It paints a very clear picture. Critical thinking prompts you to ask, who wrote this account? What was their perspective? Were they present? Do they have a reason to present things in a certain way? What were the prevailing ideas at the time? This leads us directly to evaluating sources.
And we touched on this a bit when we talked about choosing resources, but critical thinking takes it a step further. It's about understanding the why behind the source's creation.
Precisely. When evaluating a source, consider its authority. Is it from a recognized expert in the field? Is it peer-reviewed? What is the publication date? Is the information current? Then there's accuracy. Can the information be verified with other sources? Are there any obvious errors or unsubstantiated claims?
And what about objectivity or bias? That's a big one. How do we spot that?
Bias is everywhere, Lisa, in subtle and not so subtle ways. It's important to recognize that everyone has a perspective shaped by their background, beliefs, and experiences. Bias isn't inherently bad, but unacknowledged bias can distort information. Look for loaded language, emotional appeals, or one-sided arguments. Does the author present multiple viewpoints, or do they only push one agenda? What evidence is presented, and what evidence is left out?
So, if I'm reading an article that uses very strong, emotional language or only presents one side of a complex issue, that's a red flag to investigate further.
A very big red flag. Critical thinkers are aware of their own biases too. We all have them. Recognizing our own predispositions helps us to be more open to different ideas and to challenge our own assumptions. It's a constant process of self-reflection.
That's a powerful idea, Alex. It's not just about dissecting external information, but also about understanding our internal landscape and how it affects our perception.
And this is where nuance comes in so powerfully. Nuance is about appreciating the shades of gray, the complexity, the subtle differences. In many complex topics, there isn't a simple right or wrong answer. Critical thinking helps us to move beyond black and white thinking and to embrace the richness of complexity.
So, instead of thinking this policy is good or this policy is bad, a nuanced approach would be to consider this policy has these potential benefits for Group X, but might have these drawbacks for Group Y, and its long-term impact is still uncertain.
Exactly. It's about understanding the interconnectedness of ideas and the various factors that influence a situation. For example, when learning about economics, you might encounter theories that seem diametrically opposed. Instead of picking a side and rejecting the other, a critical thinker explores the assumptions, the historical context, and the real-world applications of each theory.
And that helps us avoid oversimplified conclusions that might be misleading or even harmful.
Precisely. Oversimplification is the enemy of understanding. Critical thinking also involves logical reasoning. Can you follow the chain of an argument? Are there any logical fallacies at play? Leaps in logic, unsupported conclusions, or irrelevant points being used to sway you?
Logical fallacies. I remember there are quite a few common ones, like the straw man, where someone misrepresents an opponent's argument to make it easier to attack.
That's a classic. Or the ad hominem fallacy, where someone attacks the person making the argument rather than the argument itself. When you're learning, being able to spot these flaws in reasoning helps you to see when an argument is weak, regardless of how confident the presenter seems.
So, to recap what we've discussed so far, critical thinking is about actively questioning information, evaluating the authority, accuracy, and bias of sources, being aware of our own biases, appreciating complexity and nuance, and applying logical reasoning to avoid fallacies. That's a lot to keep in mind.
It is, but becomes more intuitive with practice. How we cultivate this skill? It starts with developing a habit of questioning everything, but in a constructive way. Ask why and how. Don't be afraid to say, I don't understand, or could you explain that differently?
That links back nicely to episode 9, where we talked about asking the right questions.
Absolutely. And it also ties into episode 16, where we discuss teaching to learn. When you prepare to explain something to someone else, you're forced to clarify your own understanding and identify any gaps or fuzzy logic. That's a powerful way to practice critical thinking.
So, actively engaging with the material, not just passively consuming it.
The next step is to seek out diverse perspectives. Don't just read authors who agree with you. Read authors with different backgrounds, different ideologies, and different approaches. This exposes you to new ways of thinking and challenges your own assumptions.
This can be uncomfortable, though. Sometimes reading opposing views can feel like an attack.
It can, and that's where emotional resilience comes in. Critical thinking requires a degree of intellectual humility, the willingness to admit when you're wrong and to change your mind based on new evidence. It's not about winning an argument. It's about getting closer to the truth.
And embracing that uncertainty. Not every question has a definitive answer, and that's okay.
Exactly. It's about developing a tolerance for ambiguity. Many complex issues don't have easy solutions. Critical thinking helps us to navigate these gray areas with more wisdom and less frustration. Remember when we were talking about building your personal curriculum in episode 3? A truly robust curriculum will include diverse viewpoints precisely to foster this critical engagement.
It's like building a more complex, more resilient mental model of the world. And this skill is not just for academic learning, is it? It's vital for everyday life.
Oh, immensely. From making informed decisions about our health and finances to understanding news events and participating in civil discourse, critical thinking is fundamental. In our fast-paced, interconnected world, the ability to discern truth from fiction and to understand complex issues is more important than ever. It helps us to avoid manipulation, to make better choices, and to contribute more meaningfully to society.
So, we're not just learning what to think about a subject, but how to think about it, and by extension, how to think about the world.
That's the ultimate goal. Critical thinking empowers us to become more independent, more informed, and more effective learners and citizens. It's about thinking for ourselves with rigor and with an open mind. It's about embracing the idea that learning is a continuous process and that understanding often lies in the journey, in the questions, and in the careful examination of the nuances. It's the bedrock of true self-education.
Nourishing our mental detective agency. Alex, this has been incredibly insightful. We've covered how to evaluate sources, identify biases, appreciate nuance, and apply logic, all so we can navigate this complex world with more clarity and confidence.
And that, listeners, is a fantastic foundation for our continuing journey. Next time, we'll be looking ahead to our long-term learning goals, discussing the marathon, not the sprint. Next episode, the marathon, not the sprint, long-term learning goals. Welcome back. Last time we covered time management for learners. Now let's tackle long-term goals.
That's such an important topic, Alex. It's easy to get caught up in daily tasks or short-term wins. But real, deep learning, the kind that truly transforms us, often takes time. It requires a long-term vision.
Exactly, Lisa. Think about it. If you want to become proficient in a new language, master a complex musical instrument, or even understand a deep scientific field, that doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey, a significant investment of sustained effort. This aligns perfectly with what we discussed in episode 3, building your personal curriculum. Our long-term goals are the compass points for that curriculum.
So, when we talk about long-term learning goals, what exactly are we aiming for? Are we talking about finishing a degree or something more personal?
It's really about setting ambitious yet achievable targets that stretch beyond the immediate. These aren't just to-do list items, they're aspirational milestones. For instance, instead of learn some programming, a long-term goal might be able to develop a simple interactive program by the end of next year. Or perhaps, understand the fundamental principles of a complex subject well enough to explain them to someone unfamiliar with it within 2 years.
I like that distinction. It's about a level of mastery or capability, not just passive consumption of information. What makes a goal ambitious yet achievable? That sounds like a bit of a balancing act.
It absolutely is. An ambitious goal pushes you, it excites you, and it requires significant effort and learning. An achievable goal means it's within the realm of possibility given your resources, time, and capabilities. It's about identifying what's challenging for you, but not so overwhelming that you abandon it before you even start. We want to avoid goals that lead to burnout and disillusionment.
So, how do we go about setting these kinds of goals? Where do we begin?
The first step, as we've touched upon with your personal curriculum, is self-reflection. What truly fascinates you? What skills do you want to possess in 5, 10, or even 20 years? What impact do you want your learning to have on your life, your career, or even the world around you? Ask yourself, what kind of learner do I want to be over the long haul?
That's a great starting point. It's about connecting our learning aspirations to our deeper values and desires. Once we've identified these broader areas of interest, how do we translate them into concrete, long-term goals?
This is where we can break them down. Imagine your long-term goal is something like become a skilled craftsperson in my chosen field. That's a fantastic, broad aspiration. To make it actionable, you then break it down. Perhaps your first one-year goal is mastering the foundational techniques in your craft. Then, perhaps your second year focuses on advanced applications, and the third year on developing your unique style. Each of these smaller goals builds towards the larger vision.
So, it's like building a staircase to reach that high platform. Each step or smaller learning goal is crucial for getting to the top. This also brings to mind what we discussed about spaced repetition in episode 6. Those shorter learning bursts related to each step would reinforce the knowledge needed for the next.
Precisely. And each step should ideally build upon the previous one. If your long-term goal is to understand a complex scientific theory, you wouldn't start with the most advanced concepts. You'd build a foundation in the underlying principles first. Your personal curriculum acts as that roadmap, showing you the necessary sequences.
That makes perfect sense. It's about intentional progression. But Alex, what about motivation? Sticking with a goal for 5 or 10 years can be incredibly difficult. Life throws curveballs, interest can shift, and motivation can wane.
Motivation is a huge factor, and you're right, it's not always a constant upward trajectory. This is where cultivating patience and resilience becomes crucial. For now, let's focus on strategies to maintain that long-term vision. One powerful way is to regularly revisit why you set that goal in the first place. Connect back to that initial spark of fascination or that deep desire you identified during your self-reflection.
Keeping that why front and center. Perhaps journaling about your learning journey, including your motivations and progress, could be helpful.
Excellent suggestion, Lisa. Journaling is a fantastic tool for reflection and accountability. Another strategy is to celebrate the smaller victories along the way. When you achieve one of those stepping stone goals, acknowledge it. Reward yourself in a meaningful way. This reinforces the positive feelings associated with learning and progress, making the longer journey feel more sustainable.
That's a great reminder. We tend to focus so much on the final destination that we forget to appreciate the progress we've already made. What about the idea of flexibility? What happens if your interests genuinely shift, or if your circumstances change dramatically?
That's a critical point. Long-term goals should not be rigid chains. They should be guiding principles. Life is dynamic, and our aspirations can evolve. It's perfectly okay to reevaluate your long-term goals. Perhaps your initial goal needs to be adjusted, or maybe you discover a new, even more compelling path. The key is to make these adjustments thoughtfully, not impulsively out of frustration.
So, it's about adapting and refining rather than abandoning the pursuit of learning. It's about maintaining that core commitment to growth.
Exactly. Think of it like navigating a ship. You have a destination, but you also adjust your course based on the winds and currents. Your personal curriculum and the long-term goals within it provide that overall direction. When you encounter unexpected obstacles or discover new opportunities, you can chart a slightly different route while still heading towards your ultimate port.
And revisiting episode 3, our personal curriculum, can be a way to formally reassess and adjust those long-term goals. It's not a static document.
Absolutely. It's a living document, meant to be reviewed and updated. Another aspect to consider for long-term goals is the vision of application. How will you use what you learn? Will you apply it in your career, in a creative project, in your community, or simply for personal enrichment? Having a clear idea of the application can provide powerful, ongoing motivation.
That's a very practical way to anchor these abstract goals. If I'm learning a new skill, thinking about how I'll deploy it gives me concrete actions to work towards beyond just acquiring the knowledge.
Precisely. For example, if your long-term goal is to master a particular artistic technique, you might aim to contribute a piece to a local exhibition at some point. That application goal, sharing your work with others, provides a powerful motivator and a clear objective for your learning.
So, to recap, Alex, for setting long-term learning goals, we should first engage in deep self-reflection to understand our core fascinations and desires. Second, translate these into ambitious yet achievable goals, using our personal curriculum as a guide. Third, break these down into smaller, manageable steps or milestones. Fourth, remember the importance of patience and resilience, and regularly reconnect with our initial motivations. Fifth, celebrate progress and small victories. And finally, remain flexible and open to adapting our goals as life evolves, while always keeping that overarching vision in sight, ideally with a clear idea of how we intend to apply what we learn.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. It's about cultivating a mindset where learning isn't a race, but a continuous journey of growth and discovery. Embracing the marathon, not the sprint, allows us to delve deeper, build more robust understanding, and ultimately achieve more profound transformation through self-education.
I feel much more equipped now to think about my learning not just for the next few weeks, but for the next few years. It reframes the entire process.
And that's exactly the feeling we want to leave you with. Long-term learning is a powerful, sustainable way to build a rich and fulfilling life. Next time, we'll look at some inspiring real-world examples of lifelong learning in action. Next episode, Lifelong Learning in Action, Case Studies and Inspiration. Welcome back. Last time, we discussed setting long-term learning goals. Today, we explore inspiring real-world examples of lifelong learning.
It's one thing to talk about how to learn, but it's so much more powerful to see the results. We've covered cultivating curiosity, choosing resources, and active engagement. Now, we'll see those concepts come alive.
Let's start with Colonel Sanders. Before KFC, he had a variety of jobs. It wasn't until his 40s that he seriously developed his fried chicken recipe.
So, he wasn't just a chef, he was someone who had lived a lot of life and brought diverse experience to a new venture. It shows it's never too late to master something new.
Precisely. His curiosity about perfecting a recipe and his willingness to experiment, learn from failures and feedback, led to success. He wasn't afraid to adapt. This ties back to cultivating curiosity and learning from mistakes. Setbacks fueled his drive.
And it highlights building a personal curriculum. Colonel Sanders, in a way, built his curriculum through varied early careers. Each experience was a lesson that prepared him. He created his own path.
Absolutely. Now consider someone transitioning to a tech career from, say, history or art. They identify their interest, programming, data analysis, or web design. This is the spark of curiosity.
Then they would need to choose their learning resources. The key is selecting resources aligning with their interest and learning style.
You've got it. Let's say our aspiring tech professional focuses on data science. They might start with a free online course on Python. They actively engage, writing small programs. Remember active recall? They're not just watching, they're doing.
So they're not just absorbing information, they're applying it immediately. Then maybe they move to advanced topics like data manipulation or machine learning. This is where spaced repetition becomes crucial. They revisit concepts periodically to ensure they stick.
Exactly. And they might join online communities or forums to ask questions and get help when stuck. They're not learning in isolation. They're interacting with others, which deepens their understanding.
This shows how the pieces fit together. Curiosity leads to curriculum building, guiding resource selection. Then active learning, spaced repetition, and community engagement work together to solidify knowledge. It's about building a skill set.
Let's look at someone gaining a new skill for personal enrichment. Imagine an individual fascinated by astronomy. They start by reading books and watching documentaries. That's the initial phase.
And then they decide to go deeper. They might purchase a telescope, learn constellations, and join an astronomy club. This applies knowledge and connects them with others who share the passion. It takes learning from abstract to tangible.
That's a perfect example of making it stick and applying knowledge. They're not just learning facts, they're experiencing astronomy. They might attend stargazing events, learn telescope use, and track celestial events. This application solidifies understanding and makes learning rewarding.
And this active engagement helps with motivation, doesn't it? When you see and experience learning's results, it's a powerful motivator. It reinforces the desire to keep going, relating to motivation and learning becoming a habit.
Absolutely. Think about the power of teaching to learn. Someone knowledgeable might start a blog, a YouTube channel, or explain concepts to friends. By teaching, they organize thoughts, clarify understanding, and discover gaps.
That makes so much sense. To explain something effectively, you have to truly understand it. It's like the ultimate test of comprehension. It sounds like a powerful way to consolidate knowledge and identify areas needing work, feeding back into the continuous process.
It truly is. And in our fast-changing world, adaptability is key. Consider individuals who have had to reskill multiple times. They've utilized self-directed learning, online courses, workshops, certifications to stay relevant. This is lifelong learning in action, proving we don't stop learning after school. This connects to adaptability and resilience.
It's that proactive approach. They don't wait to be told they need a new skill. They anticipate or respond quickly. They see learning not as a chore, but as an essential tool for navigating their professional lives and achieving goals.
And these aren't just stories about career advancement. Lifelong learning can profoundly impact personal growth and fulfillment. Think of someone learning a new language to connect with heritage or taking up an instrument late in life for creative expression. These aren't always about economic gain, but enriching one's life and understanding. This leads toward moving beyond information acquisition to wisdom.
It's about broadening perspectives and experiencing the world in richer ways. It's about becoming a more complete, well-rounded individual. These case studies show that the principles we've discussed, curiosity, structured learning, active engagement, and dedication, are practical, powerful tools for transformation.
They are. And as we wrap up this episode, I want to reiterate that these examples are here to inspire you. They show that with intention and the right strategies, you can achieve remarkable things through self-education. Whether you're Colonel Sanders, starting a new venture in your 40s, an individual pivoting to tech, or someone learning the stars, the path to knowledge is open to everyone.
So, the takeaway today is that lifelong learning isn't just an abstract concept, it's a lived reality for countless individuals. We've seen how curiosity sparks action, how personal curricula are built, and how resources are wisely chosen. These are interconnected actions leading to significant personal and professional growth.
And these transformations are fueled by consistent effort, a willingness to learn from challenges, and the courage to pursue new knowledge. They're proof that the journey of learning is indeed a marathon, not a sprint, and the rewards are immeasurable.
And this is exactly what we'll be exploring further in our next episode, where we look at continuous feedback loops to refine your learning process even more.
Next episode, the continuous feedback loop, refining your learning process. Welcome back. Last time, we explored how to set and achieve long-term learning goals. Now, let's tackle adaptability and resilience.
That's right, Alex. The world is always changing, and what we learned yesterday might not be enough for tomorrow. Adaptability and resilience feel like the superpowers of a lifelong learner.
Exactly. And the beauty of cultivating a self-education habit is that it inherently builds these qualities. Think about it, Lisa. When you're actively choosing to learn, you're stepping into the unknown, and that requires an adaptable mindset.
It's true. You can't just stick to what you comfortably know. You have to be willing to explore new subjects, learn new skills, and even unlearn things that are no longer relevant.
And that's where resilience comes in. Learning isn't always a smooth ride. We encounter challenges, we get stuck, and sometimes we feel like giving up. Resilience is that inner strength that helps us push through those tough moments. Remember when we discussed learning from mistakes back in episode 12? That's a direct link to resilience.
Absolutely. Every mistake is an opportunity to learn and adjust. It's not about avoiding failure, but about knowing that you can bounce back and try again, perhaps with a different approach. It's about perseverance.
Perseverance is key, and to be resilient, we need to embrace change rather than fear it. This means being open to new information, new technologies, and new ways of doing things. It's about staying agile in our learning.
So, how do we actively cultivate this agility in our learning? It's not just about having a good attitude, right?
Not all. One of the most effective ways to build learning agility is to intentionally vary your learning experiences. Don't always stick to the same format or the same sources. If you usually read books, try listening to podcasts or watching documentaries. If you're used to online courses, consider attending a local workshop. This exposes you to different perspectives and teaching styles, forcing your brain to adapt.
That's a great point. It's like cross-training for your brain. By engaging different parts of your learning apparatus, you become more flexible.
Precisely. And in episode 13, we talked about building sustainable learning routines, which are crucial for consistency. But for adaptability, we also need to incorporate flexibility within those routines. This means being able to pivot when circumstances change. Your planned learning for the day might need to shift if an urgent personal matter arises or if a new learning opportunity pops up unexpectedly.
So, it's about having a structure, but also being able to bend that structure when needed without breaking.
You've got it. It's about finding that balance. Another powerful strategy is to actively seek out feedback. When you ask others for their thoughts on your work or your understanding, you're opening yourself up to different viewpoints. This feedback, even if it's critical, helps you see where you might need to adjust your approach.
That ties back to episode 9, where we discussed asking the right questions. Asking for feedback is a form of asking a clarifying question about your own progress.
Excellent connection, Lisa. And remember, this feedback loop isn't just about hearing what others think. It's also about self-reflection. Regularly pausing to assess your learning process, What worked, what didn't, and why is a fundamental act of adaptation. Are your current learning methods still serving you well? Are you achieving the outcomes you expect?
This self-assessment is like course correction. You're looking at your internal compass and making sure you're still heading in the right direction, or adjusting the destination if necessary.
Exactly. And to foster resilience, it's important to cultivate a mindset that views challenges as temporary obstacles rather than insurmountable barriers. When you face a difficult concept or a setback, instead of thinking, I can't do this, try reframing it as this is challenging, but I can figure out a way through it.
That reframing is so powerful. It shifts your focus from the problem to the solution. It sounds simple, but I imagine it takes conscious effort and practice.
It absolutely does. And this is where the habit of self-education truly shines. Each time you successfully navigate a learning challenge, you are reinforcing your resilience. You build confidence in your ability to learn and adapt. So, when you encounter a new and unfamiliar situation, you approach it with a sense of, I can learn this, rather than, this is too hard for me.
It's like building up a mental muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Precisely. And in today's rapidly evolving landscape, where industries are disrupted, technologies emerge overnight, and job requirements shift, this ability to adapt and learn continuously isn't just a nice to have. It's an absolute necessity. It's the core of staying relevant and effective.
It makes me think about scenarios where people have to pivot their careers entirely. They might have been experts in one field for decades, and then suddenly the industry changes, and they need to acquire entirely new skills. Their adaptability and resilience are what allow them to make that transition successfully.
Those are powerful examples. Consider someone who worked in a field heavily impacted by automation. Instead of becoming discouraged, they leverage their self-education habit to learn about new emerging technologies, perhaps in data analysis or AI. They are actively choosing to adapt rather than being passively left behind.
Or think about unexpected global events, like a pandemic. Suddenly, how we work, how we learn, and how we connect entirely changed. Those who were already comfortable with online learning and digital tools were much more resilient and adaptable to the abrupt shift.
Those are fantastic real-world illustrations of adaptability and resilience in action. It highlights how our ongoing commitment to learning isn't just about acquiring knowledge. It's about building the fundamental capacity to thrive in any environment. It prepares us for the unpredictable.
So, to recap what we've discussed today, adaptability and resilience are vital for lifelong learners, especially in a changing world. Our self-education habit naturally fosters these qualities. We can actively build them by varying our learning methods, staying flexible within our routines, seeking feedback, and practicing self-reflection. Crucially, it's about adopting a mindset that views challenges as temporary and manageable, and seeing every learning hurdle overcome as a reinforcement of our inner strength.
That's a brilliant summary, Lisa. Embracing change and building the capacity to bounce back are not just skills. They are foundational to a fulfilling and successful lifelong learning journey. They're the essence of navigating the marathon, not the sprint, that we discussed in episode 20. Next episode, Beyond Information Acquisition, Wisdom and Insight. Welcome back. Last time we covered building strong learning habits. Now let's tackle wisdom and insight.
That's right, Alex. We've become good at gathering information, remembering facts, and understanding concepts. We've built strong learning habits. But today we're moving beyond just acquiring information to talk about something deeper, wisdom and insight.
Exactly, Lisa. You can memorize every fact in a history book, but does that make you wise about human nature? You can learn all the rules of chess, but does that make you a strategic genius? Information is the raw material, but wisdom is what you build with it.
So, how do we go from knowing things to truly understanding them in a way that informs how we live?
It starts with understanding that wisdom isn't just about having more data. It's about discernment. It's about connecting dots that aren't immediately obvious. It's about applying knowledge contextually and ethically. The first step is deepening our learning beyond surface level comprehension. Remember active recall and spaced repetition? Those are for retention, but for wisdom, we need to push further with critical analysis.
Critical analysis. What does that mean for our self-education?
It means asking why and how relentlessly. It's not just accepting information at face value. When you learn something new, ask yourself, what are the assumptions behind this? What evidence supports this claim? What are potential counterarguments? Are there biases at play? This engages you with the material, helping you form your own informed opinions.
So, it's like being a detective for information, not just a recipient.
Precisely. And this detective work should be applied to information we've already accumulated. Go back to things you thought you understood and ask those critical questions again. You might find new layers or realize your previous understanding was incomplete. This reevaluation is crucial for developing insight.
That makes sense. It's about looking at information from multiple angles.
Yes, and this often involves seeking out diverse perspectives. If you only read one type of news or follow similar viewpoints online, your analytical lens will be narrow. True insight comes from understanding how different people interpret the same facts. It's about empathy through understanding.
So, wisdom isn't just about intellect, it's also about perspective and empathy.
Absolutely. And here's where experience plays a massive role. We can read all the books about leadership, but until you're in a situation where you need to lead and you make mistakes and learn from them, that knowledge remains theoretical. Wisdom is often forged in lived experience, combined with applied learning.
I see. So, the information we gain through self-education needs to be tested in the real world.
Exactly. And this is why application is so important. Remember making it stick? That wasn't just about reinforcing memory. It was about putting knowledge to work. When you apply what you learn, you encounter practical challenges. You see where your theoretical knowledge holds up and where it falls short. This feedback loop between learning and doing is a powerful engine for generating insight.
So, if we want to cultivate wisdom, we need to actively seek opportunities to use what we learn in real-life situations.
Correct. It could be as simple as trying a new cooking technique you learn about and adapting it. Or it could be applying a project management principle to your personal tasks and seeing how it improves your efficiency. These aren't just exercises, they're experiments in real-world learning.
And during these experiments, we inevitably encounter setbacks, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that brings us to another crucial element in the path to wisdom, learning to process those mistakes constructively. Remember, learning from mistakes. Wisdom doesn't come from avoiding errors. It comes from extracting lessons from them. When something goes wrong, the wise person asks, what can I learn from this?
It's about reframing failure not as an endpoint, but as another data point, another piece of feedback.
Precisely. It's about understanding that a setback isn't a reflection of your inherent worth or intelligence, but an opportunity to refine your approach. This resilience, this ability to bounce back and learn, is a hallmark of wisdom. It's the understanding that the learning process is iterative, and sometimes progress looks like a step back before two steps forward.
So, let's recap. We've talked about critical analysis, seeking diverse perspectives, the role of lived experience, and learning from mistakes. These all seem to combine to move us beyond just information acquisition.
They do. And this transformation allows us to develop a more profound perspective on life. When you have a solid foundation of knowledge, tested by experience and refined by critical thought, you start to see the interconnectedness of things. You begin to understand underlying patterns and principles that govern different situations.
It sounds like wisdom allows us to navigate complexity with greater clarity and grace.
That's a beautiful way to put it, Lisa. It's about making better decisions because you have a deeper, more nuanced understanding of the world and your place in it. It means being able to offer thoughtful advice, to see potential consequences others might miss, and to respond to situations with a sense of integrated understanding rather than just reacting with learned responses.
And this is where self-education truly shines, isn't it? Because it's a journey we tailor to ourselves, allowing us to build wisdom that is relevant to our own lives.
Exactly. The information we gather becomes the clay, and our critical thinking, experiences, and reflective practice are the potter's hands, shaping it into something meaningful. It's less about accumulating a giant library of facts and more about cultivating a discerning mind. In this process, this journey towards wisdom and insight is truly a lifelong endeavor. It's the ultimate goal of continually learning.
So, it's not like there's a point where you suddenly become wise. It's a continuous process of refinement.
That's right. It's a continuous feedback loop. The more we learn, the more we reflect, the more we experience, the deeper our insights become. It's about the quality of our understanding, not just the quantity of information we possess. And that ultimately enriches every aspect of our lives.
That's a really inspiring thought, Alex. Moving from just knowing things to truly understanding them and using that understanding to live a better life.
Indeed. So, to sum up this episode, shifting from information acquisition to wisdom and insight involves active critical analysis of what we learn. It requires seeking diverse perspectives and allowing our knowledge to be tested and refined through lived experience. Embracing mistakes as learning opportunities is key to building resilience and deepening our understanding. This journey leads to a more profound perspective on life, enabling better decision-making and a richer experience of the world around us.
Fantastic. So, we've spent a lot of time building the how-to of learning. Next time, we'll look at how that learning process itself can be continuously improved.
That's right. Next episode, we'll be discussing the continuous feedback loop, refining your learning process. Thanks for listening. Welcome back. Last time, we explored how adaptability and resilience are key for lifelong learning.
Right, Alex? We talked about how the world is always changing and our learning needs to change with it. It's about being able to reevaluate and adjust.
Exactly. And that brings us perfectly to today's topic, the continuous feedback loop. It's about taking that adaptability and applying it directly to our learning methods.
A feedback loop. So, like checking in on how we're doing and making adjustments?
Precisely. Think of it as your learning process having a built-in quality control system. You learn something, you assess how well you learned it, and then you tweak your approach based on that assessment. It's not enough to just acquire information. We need to ensure it's sticking and that our methods are efficient.
That makes sense. Because sometimes you might spend hours studying something, only to realize later that you didn't really grasp it. It feels like a wasted effort if you don't have a way to catch that.
Absolutely. And this feedback loop connects to so many of the strategies we've discussed throughout this series. Remember active recall? How testing yourself immediately after learning helps solidify knowledge. That's a micro feedback loop. You ask yourself a question, and your ability to answer it correctly or incorrectly is the feedback.
Oh, I see. So, active recall is a form of immediate feedback. If you get it wrong, you know you need to revisit that material.
You've got it. Now let's broaden that. A continuous feedback loop is more systematic. It's about stepping back regularly, maybe weekly, monthly, or after completing a specific learning project, and asking, what's working, what's not working, and how can I learn more effectively moving forward?
So, it's not just about checking if I remember facts, but also checking if my methods are effective. Am I using the best resources? Am I spending my time wisely?
Exactly. This involves evaluating your learning strategies. Are you using spaced repetition effectively? Is your personal curriculum still aligned with your goals? Are your media habits supporting or hindering your learning? If you find you're constantly distracted by social media, that's feedback indicating a need to refine those habits.
And how do we get this feedback? I mean, besides just asking ourselves?
Great question. One powerful way is through self-reflection. After a study session, jot down a few thoughts. What felt easy? What was challenging? Did I understand the core concepts? Or just memorize a few facts? Did I achieve what I set out to learn in that session? This self-assessment is crucial.
So, keeping a learning journal, perhaps?
A learning journal is an excellent tool for this. It provides a structured way to capture these reflections. You can look back over your entries and see patterns. Perhaps you notice you understand visual explanations better than purely text-based ones, or that you learn best when you can immediately apply a concept.
That's really valuable. It helps you personalize your learning even further, building on what works best for you.
And it's not just about what works well. Identifying what's not working is where the real growth happens. If you're consistently struggling with a particular type of problem, or if a learning resource isn't engaging, that feedback tells you to seek out a different approach or a different resource. This is where learning from mistakes becomes actionable.
So, the feedback isn't just about getting things right, but about spotting weaknesses and having a plan to address them.
Absolutely. Imagine you're learning a new language. You might be practicing speaking, but you realize your grammar is still shaky. The feedback from your practice sessions tells you that while speaking is important, you also need to dedicate more time to studying grammar rules and doing targeted exercises. It's about course correction.
It sounds like this feedback loop helps us avoid getting stuck in ineffective learning ruts.
Precisely. Think about the different stages of learning. You might start by acquiring information, then move to understanding it, then to applying it, and finally to analyzing or creating with it. A good feedback loop helps you identify if you're plateauing at one of these stages. If you can recall information but can't explain it in your own words, that's feedback that you need to move towards deeper processing.
And we talked about learning communities earlier in the series. Can they be part of this feedback loop?
Definitely. Communities provide external feedback, which is invaluable. When you explain a concept to someone else, their questions reveal gaps in your understanding. When you present your work or ideas, constructive criticism from peers or mentors offers insights you might miss on your own.
Right, because they're looking at it with fresh eyes. They might see assumptions you're making or connections you haven't considered.
Exactly. This is also where the teaching to learn concept comes into play. By trying to explain something, you're actively seeking feedback from yourself and your audience on how clear your understanding is. If your explanation is confusing, the feedback is clear. You need to refine your own grasp of the material.
So, to recap, the continuous feedback loop for learning involves 1. Regularly assessing your learning strategies. 2. Identifying what's working and what's not. 3. Using self-reflection and tools like learning journals to gather insights. 4. Incorporating external feedback from communities or mentors. 5. And then, most importantly, acting on that feedback to adapt and improve.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. This loop isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing process. It's what stops learning from being a static activity and makes it a dynamic, evolving skill. It's about being a meta-learner, learning how to learn better.
It reminds me of how athletes constantly analyze their performance, watch game footage, and adjust their training. They don't just keep doing the same thing if it's not yielding results.
Fantastic analogy. And for us, the game footage is our study sessions, our projects, our attempts to use new knowledge. The analysis is the reflection and feedback process. And the adjustment is refining our techniques, perhaps dedicating more time to spaced repetition, seeking out more challenging problems, or improving our note-taking methods.
It's about intentional improvement rather than just passive consumption of information.
Absolutely. And this continuous refinement ensures that our learning journey is always moving forward, becoming more effective and more deeply integrated. It's the engine that drives true mastery and keeps our self-education habit robust and responsive to our evolving needs and the changing world around us. It's the bridge between simply knowing things and truly understanding and being able to use them.
So, by constantly checking in and adjusting, we're not just learning more, we're learning smarter.
Precisely. This brings us to the final leg of our series journey. We've covered building curiosity, crafting a curriculum, active learning techniques like recall and spaced repetition, managing habits and motivation, and importantly, today's topic of the continuous feedback loop for constant refinement.
It's amazing how all these pieces fit together to create a powerful, adaptable approach to self-education.
It truly is. Next time, we'll be visiting a topic that encapsulates the ultimate aim of all our learning efforts, cultivating wisdom and insight, and how to share that with others. Thanks for listening. Welcome back. Last time we discussed refining your learning process. Now, let's build your learning legacy.
It's incredible that we're on the final episode, Alex. Over these episodes, we've explored building a self-education habit. This final topic, your learning legacy, feels like the ultimate culmination. It's about the impact our learning has on others.
Exactly, Lisa. When you embrace lifelong learning, its benefits don't stay confined to you. They radiate outwards, inspiring and influencing those around you. Think about the people who have ignited your own desire to learn.
Oh, definitely. I can think of friends, teachers, even authors whose passion for their subjects made me curious and eager to explore. Their own learning became a powerful example.
Precisely. So, our learning legacy is about consciously becoming that positive influence. It's about sharing what we've learned and fostering a culture of curiosity and growth within our families, workplaces, and communities.
That sounds both exciting and a bit challenging. How do we actively inspire others when we're still on our own learning path?
A fantastic way to start is by simply being open about your learning journey. Share your enthusiasm for new discoveries, what you're currently exploring, and even the challenges you're facing. This honesty makes learning relatable.
So, if I'm trying to learn a new skill and I'm not perfect at it yet, it's okay to talk about the learning process itself, not just the perfect outcome.
Absolutely. Sharing the journey, the effort, and the small breakthroughs is often more inspiring than presenting a flawless end result. It demonstrates that learning is a dynamic, evolving process. Remember episode 12, where we discussed learning from mistakes? That's a prime example.
Right, turning setbacks into stepping stones. So, by being authentic, we make learning seem more accessible and encourage others to explore their own interests. What else can we do to inspire?
We can actively share useful knowledge. This can be as simple as recommending a book or podcast that broadened your perspective or explaining a complex idea in a clear way to a colleague. Think back to episode 16, Teaching to Learn. When you explain something to someone else, you deepen your own understanding while also directly helping them learn.
That makes so much sense. Explaining something forces you to really grasp it, and it feels rewarding to help someone else understand a concept they've been grappling with. It's like passing on a valuable tool.
A perfect analogy. And this sharing doesn't need to be formal. Enthusiastic conversations about your learning can naturally spark curiosity in others. Consider how we've used analogies and clear explanations throughout this series. That's us, in a way, aiming to make knowledge more accessible.
You've done wonderfully with that, Alex. I feel so much more equipped to continue learning. It's exciting to think that all the skills we've covered, like active recall and choosing learning resources, can also be used to help others on their own learning paths.
Absolutely. For instance, think about episode 4, Smart Selection. choosing your learning resources wisely. If you discover an excellent online course or a particularly informative article, sharing that resource with someone who could benefit is a powerful act. You're curating learning opportunities for others.
So, it's about being a guide and a recommender, and also a role model. It's about sharing the entire learning experience, not just the final product.
Yes, and it's also about creating an environment that supports learning. This might involve encouraging questions, celebrating progress, and making space for experimentation. Remember episode 8, The Power of the Group? Building supportive learning communities is key.
That's a great point. People can be hesitant to try new things if they fear judgment. Creating a safe space where it's okay to not know everything and where exploration is valued can make a huge difference. It's like planting seeds of curiosity.
And those seeds can blossom into significant growth and lifelong passions for others. Your legacy isn't just defined by your own achievements, but by the inspiration you provide and the learning opportunities you help create. It's about contributing to a world where learning is an ongoing, exciting adventure for everyone.
This truly connects back to our very first episode, episode 1, the unlocking potential. We realized that our potential isn't fixed, it's something we can continually expand. And by sharing our own learning journey and enthusiasm, we can help others unlock their own potential.
Precisely. We've explored building a personal curriculum, mastering active recall, staying motivated, and adapting to change. All these valuable skills we've developed are not just for us. They become resources we can share. Imagine helping a child discover a love for reading or guiding a junior colleague through a new task. That's your learning legacy in action.
It's like the whole series has come full circle. We started with the individual's desire to learn, then focused on building sustainable habits, and now we're extending that outward to impact others. It's about multiplying the positive outcomes of learning.
Exactly. And this doesn't require you to be an expert in everything or a formal instructor. It's about using your own experiences, insights, and passion to spark curiosity and support the learning journeys of those around you. You become a catalyst for growth.
A catalyst for discovery and inspiration. It's a powerful way to conclude this series, Alex, giving our personal learning journey a broader meaning.
It truly does. And remember, this isn't about adding another demanding task to your life. It's about integrating this into your existing journey. When you're excited about something you're learning, share that excitement. When you find a great learning resource, mention it. These consistent, smaller actions create a significant ripple effect.
So, to summarize, building our learning legacy involves being authentic about our learning journey, actively sharing knowledge and recommended resources, fostering supportive environments for learning, and letting our genuine passion inspire those around us.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. As we conclude this series, I hope you, our listeners, feel inspired to not only continue your own self-education, but also to become strong influences for learning within your own communities. Your personal growth can truly ignite the growth of others.
It's about leaving the world a little more curious, a little more knowledgeable, and a lot more inspired.
Well said. And with that, we've reached the end of Never Stop Learning, Build Self-Education Habit. It's been an incredible journey exploring how to cultivate curiosity, build effective learning strategies, and sustain that momentum throughout our lives. We've covered everything from the bedrock of learning and active recall to the long-term commitment and adaptability required in a changing world. We've looked at leveraging communities, asking the right questions, and turning failure into fuel. And in this final episode, we've focused on how our personal commitment to learning can create a ripple effect, inspiring others and building a legacy of continuous growth.
It's been an honor to share this journey with you, Alex, and with all our listeners. The principles we've discussed are practical tools to empower your life. Remember, the journey of learning never truly ends.
Indeed. Thank you for being a part of this series. We hope you've gained valuable insights and feel equipped to make lifelong learning a vibrant, inspiring, and impactful part of your life and the lives of those around you.
Thanks for listening to the series.
Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the final episode of Never Stop Learning. Build your self-education habit. I'm Alex.
And I'm Lisa. This has been an incredible journey, exploring how to cultivate a lifelong love of learning. Today, we're wrapping everything up, tying together all the threads, and looking forward to the path ahead.
Absolutely, Lisa. Over the past 25 episodes, we've covered so much ground. We started by understanding why self-education matters, unlocking your potential, and the importance of raw curiosity. Remember episode 1? We talked about how an inquisitive mind is the most powerful tool in your learning arsenal.
We did. And then we moved on to building your personal curriculum, figuring out what you want to learn. That's about creating a roadmap for yourself, independent of any formal institution. It's about owning your education.
Exactly. And to build that roadmap effectively, we discussed choosing your learning resources wisely. Are you leaning on books, online courses, mentors? It's about finding what works best for your learning style and the subject matter.
That led us into the active learning methods, which were a game changer for me. Mastering active recall, basically, testing yourself constantly and understanding the power of spaced repetition. It's like training your brain to remember things long term, not just for a quick test.
Those are fundamental, aren't they? Active recall is like challenging yourself to retrieve information without looking, and spaced repetition is strategically revisiting that information at increasing intervals. It's the difference between cramming and truly internalizing knowledge.
And we also talked about building disciplined media habits. It's so easy to get sidetracked, so learning to manage your focus, especially with digital distractions, is crucial.
Crucial indeed. Then we delved into the power of community, learning from others, forming learning groups, and engaging in discussions. It amplifies your understanding and keeps you motivated. Remember episode 8, The Power of the Group?
Oh, yes. And from there, we explored the art of asking the right questions. That's not just about getting answers, but about deepening your comprehension by probing further. It's about pushing past the surface level.
Absolutely. And to make that knowledge truly your own, we talked about consolidation and application, actively using what you've learned. This could be through projects, teaching others, or simply integrating in your daily life.
That segues perfectly into navigating the motivation maze. Because let's be honest, keeping that drive alive is a constant challenge. We discussed turning failure into fuel, learning from mistakes instead of letting them derail you.
Failure is feedback. It's a vital part of the learning process, not an endpoint. And building sustainable learning routines through the habit loop was another key focus. Creating those consistent actions that make learning a natural part of your day.
We also encouraged expanding your horizons with interdisciplinary learning, connecting ideas from different fields to foster creativity and a more holistic understanding of the world. Remember how Alex explained that science and art aren't so different?
They really aren't. And in our digital age, navigating online learning platforms effectively became a key topic too, making the most of the vast resources available at our fingertips.
Then came the powerful concept of teaching to learn. By explaining something to someone else, you solidify your own understanding in a profound way. It's that ultimate test of mastery.
And of course, time management. For any lifelong learner, effectively managing your time is paramount. We looked at strategies to make sure learning fits into your life without overwhelming you.
We also spent time embracing nuance and critical thinking, especially in our complex world. It's not just about absorbing information, but about evaluating it, understanding different perspectives, and forming your own informed opinions.